cancer diagnosis, bad low numbers for Trump and the Democrats. We'll discuss it all with Steve Kerrigan, Mass Democratic Chair, and Amy Carnevale, Chair of the Mass GOP.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll open the phone and text lines with economic anxiety, civil uncertainty, and general feelings of blah about the state of our country. Some people are putting life on hold, holding off having kids, buying a house, changing jobs. Can you relate? With graduation season in full swing, is this kind of apprehension anything new? Or have 20-somethings always had to battle some degree of discontent? Are you 20-something? What do you think? Call or text next. First hour at BPR and 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. A watchdog group is suing the Trump administration for allegedly withholding public records. In a new lawsuit, the group, American Oversight, is accusing multiple agencies of violating the Freedom of Information Act. NPR's Luke Garrett reports.
The watchdog group says the White House is breaking federal law by blocking the release of its records. Here's American Oversight Executive Director Chioma Chukwu.
Our lawsuit seeks to compel the IRS, the Department of Treasury, and Department of Education to release records that they're unlawfully withholding from the public.
The group is seeking White House communications regarding President Trump's attacks against Harvard University. The White House has criticized Harvard for not doing enough to protect Jewish students and cut billions in grants to the university. But Chukwu says the suit is about more than just Harvard.
Today is Harvard. Tomorrow it could be any university.
The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Luke Garrett, NPR News, Washington.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is going to allow some food aid to get into Gaza. Israel has blocked all relief aid from reaching Palestinians in the territory, raising fears of famine. The Israeli government is trying to pressure Hamas to release hostages. NPR's Daniel Estrin says some Israelis do not want Netanyahu to allow any supplies to reach Palestinians.
And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been facing right-wing criticism in Israel about renewing this food. And he said, look, we would not be able to continue to have international support for our offensive in Gaza if there is mass starvation. He said, we're going to take control of Gaza. We need to do it in a way that they won't stop us.
NPR's Daniel Estrin reporting. Separately, Israel has launched an expansive ground offensive in northern Gaza. Palestinians are reporting constant and heavy bombing and shelling. Telecommunications company Verizon is the latest big company to scale back on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts under pressure from the federal government. NPR's Maria Aspen reports the Federal Communications Commission gave Verizon its blessing on Friday for a $20 billion deal.
Many big companies are backing away from what's known as DEI after once promising to create more equitable opportunities for all employees. But now, President Trump has declared such programs illegal, and the Federal Communications Commission has taken a big role in trying to pressure companies to do away with them. For example, Verizon has been seeking approval to buy Frontier, a broadband provider. So it told the FCC that it would end many of its policies relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Verizon will no longer set goals to hire more minorities, and it will remove references to DEI from its websites. Now the FCC has approved Verizon's deal, and it specifically cited Verizon's promise to end DEI-related practices. Maria Aspen, NPR News, New York.
On Wall Street, stocks are lower. The Dow Jones Industrials are down more than 20 points. You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. President Trump's tough-talking border czar, Tom Homan, says ICE's work is not done in Massachusetts and that he'll soon come back to the Bay State. Boston 25 reports that Homan said he's willing to meet with Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, but adds that his experience contradicts Healey's claims that Massachusetts is not a sanctuary state. Homan says he gets a weekly report of public safety threats from counties in the Commonwealth. Sad news to report that the writer and retired professor Leslie Epstein has died. Epstein authored several books, was the director of the creative writing program at Boston University for 36 years before his retirement. His articles and stories have appeared in everything from the Atlantic Monthly to Esquire, the Washington Post, New York Times, the Boston Globe, to name just a few. And you also may have heard of his sons, Theo Epstein, the baseball guru, and Paul Epstein, who's a social worker at Brookline High and founder of the Brookline Youth Center. Paul posted about his dad's death on Facebook earlier today, writing, quote, "Yesterday, I had to say goodbye to my wonderful father, Leslie Epstein, he of the razor-sharp wit, the towering intellect, the hopefully inherited strong moral compass, and the bottomless well of nurturing love." Unquote. Paul adds that info on Shiva and a celebration of life will be announced soon. Leslie Epstein was 87 years old. Mostly cloudy, windy 60s today. We're at 59 outside our studios here in Brighton. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to Boston Public Radio. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A couple of programming notes, Jim. I'm going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow and Wednesday. The Attorney General Andrea Campbell will join us from 1 to 2 on Wednesday. I think. Hello, Jim.
I think so, too. So
Thank you.
We shall see. We're joined now in Studio 3 by Amy Carnevale, head of the Massachusetts Republican Party. Hi, Amy. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
Steve Kerrigan is the head of the Massachusetts Democratic Party. They join us to talk what? But politics. Welcome to you both.
Good to be here.
So, Amy, let's start with you. Give us your take on the first 100-plus days of President Trump. What do you like? What don't you like?
Certainly, it's been 100 days of lots of activity. The Trump administration came in prepared, I think, in contrast to 2016, where it took a lot of time getting appointments made. This Trump administration came in with a number of executive orders. I think it's totaled many dozens of executive orders. And really, I would say from a Republican standpoint, he's hit the ground running in terms of executive orders and really trying to boost domestic energy production, made in America, and bringing our economy back on track. So I think it's been a successful 100 days.
What do you think, Steve?
I think it's been more than 100 days of utter chaos, and he has done nothing to enhance our position in the world. He has, frankly, reduced our standing among our allies. He has certainly reduced a lot of people's 401ks with his tariffs on and off and on and off. He's impacted markets. He's impacted communities. He has, frankly, run amok and ignored the Constitution every day he's been in office, and I don't suspect it'll change much.
He's helping to elect leaders around the country, around the world. The Romanian president was elected yesterday.
That's right.
Yes.
That's
But
right.
the only bad news, I would argue, for your side, Steve Kerrigan, is the only group of people who are far less popular than Donald Trump are the Democrats.
Yes.
And they are. The numbers, while Trump's numbers are pathetic, they're around 40%. The Democrats are around 30%, and they don't seem to be bumps. So how do they get out of that hole?
Well, I would say if you look at the numbers in elections, we narrowed the margins in those two Florida congressional districts by 20 and 25 points. We won that Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. So where people aren't into either party, sorry, Amy, as entities and what we represent, but the values and the issues that we stand for as the Democratic Party is what voters are stepping out for and getting to the polls for. And
So why are they
that's the
rating
biggest
them
impact.
so pathetically poorly if they share their values?
I think any elected leader, any political leader has to be very clear about what they will do when and if they get into office and what the contrast is to what we're facing now. And the Democratic Party has to be very clear, as we try to be here in Massachusetts, that we're the party for opportunity for all, for affordability, and for, frankly, living up to the American dream. And I very firmly believe democratic values are American values, and the voters are responding to that.
And to your point, Jim, though, I would say it's clear on the national level, there is no leadership of the Democratic Party right now. They seem to be floundering to find some leadership and direction to move ahead.
What do you say to that? Who is the leader? I mean, that's an interesting.
Well,
who is the leader of the Democratic Party?
Well, we have a chair of the party, but
what's his
Ken
name
Martin.
again?
Ken Martin.
Sorry.
But we
Do you have to think for a second? Or
No,
you
no,
know it?
I know
Okay,
Ken
just
well.
wanna be clear.
He was the chair from Minnesota before.
I know that. I was kidding.
But sort of. But we have leaders all over the place. We've got Pete Buttigieg, who, by the way, had to go out to Iowa to talk to voters there because Republicans are hiding from their own constituents at the instruction of their leaders. We've got Tim Walz is out there, Andy Beshear. We've got leaders in different categories. Maura Healey is a leader among governors fighting for the issues that we need here in Massachusetts, fighting against the draconian cuts that Amy just celebrated that the president did in the last 100 days. So leaders don't have to be just one person. We're also not the party that believes we all must swear fealty to dear leader and do everything that one person wants us to do. We have the diversity of our party, and that's one of our biggest strengths.
You know, Amy, one of the things that upsets me the most, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. You probably heard me say that before. But one of the things that upsets me most is, the old joke was, Boston's a great place to get sick because we have the greatest hospitals in the world, and they're doing cutting-edge research, children's hospitals, Mass General. Our whole economy in Massachusetts is people like to call it eds and meds, education and medical schools. Where's the justification to go after cancer research, Alzheimer's research, children's cancers research? I mean, it's just kind of nauseating.
So I think it's important to take a look at where the cuts are and where they're being made. And President Trump and this administration has made clear that they're not always going to get it right. And they've engaged in dialogue with communities about programs that are working. And when you think about NIH, lots of that cancer research will continue. But this administration
By the way, the research that caused people like Joe Biden to have a better chance to survive by NIH has been reduced dramatically for whatever that's worth.
And the Nurses' Health Study that's been there since 1989, which is a big deal, linked alcohol to breast cancer, talked about trans fats and heart disease for women. It's done.
So I think this is really why it's important to have Republicans at the table in Washington, D.C. New England, we are down to one federal representative with Susan Collins of Maine. So it's important to have bipartisan balance in Republican elected officials. When you think about an issue like the salt tax, that's the state and local tax deduction that's now being considered as part of the reconciliation bill. One of the reasons that the House is looking at retaining some portion of the salt tax is Representative Michael Lawler from New York. And so having those Republicans, those moderate Republicans at the table is really, really important.
What do you say to low-income people in Massachusetts that depend upon Medicaid, which is more than 1 million people here, that clearly is not only going to be cut fairly significantly, the only way they're going to get the hardcore right people in the House to sign on to the ultimate deal is if they cut it even further. The issue is just, when's the cutting going to begin?
So I think President Trump has said that he wants to ensure that Medicaid remains available for the populations that need it, but we have to look at the growth of Medicaid and in terms of imposing things like work requirements on able-bodied individuals, we're going to look at reductions so that the program can continue to be available as it was originally envisioned.
How about it, Steve?
Yeah, able-bodied people who are on Medicaid do work. People aren't, this is not a program where people get the benefit for their health care and just sit at home. Those who can't work because they're disabled. 70% of people in nursing homes, by the way, are on Medicaid. What are we going to say to those folks? Do you have a guest room at home to take in your grandmother or grandfather? I mean, there's 10% of veterans are on Medicaid. Medicaid is not just about, and these threats are not just about threatening people to get back to work. They already do work. And I frankly think doing this, cutting a program that supports the most needy among us to guarantee the availability of tax cuts for billionaires is disgusting.
Well, the thing about
Amy was going to respond.
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, so I'll just say, again, it's about ensuring the program remains available, and this is an ongoing process. The House is just the start of the process. We still have the U.S. Senate to take up the bill, and at the end of the day, this administration and President Trump himself has said Medicaid should remain available for those who want it.
Except for every one of those House members would do exactly what he tells them to do, and they haven't done that. Medicaid is not staying available. So if he really believes that, I believe he thinks that's the talking point that he has to say. But if he really believes it, the House Republicans would be doing that. And right now they are not. And in Massachusetts, $16 billion comes to Massachusetts from Medicaid and impacts people all across our Commonwealth.
We're talking to Steve Kerrigan and Amy Carnevale. They respectively lead the Democratic and Republican parties of Massachusetts.
All weekend long, people have been talking about Jake Tapper and the guy from Axios. What's his name?
Alex somebody. I can't remember. Thompson, maybe?
Yeah, they've written a book together talking about how all these people knew about Joe Biden's cognitive problems and kept quiet about it. Now, of course, we know that Joe Biden has been diagnosed with aggressive kind of prostate cancer that's spread to his bones. But the fact that people certainly like Kamala Harris, who was song quite a bit, and cabinet members. This is a big trust problem for the Democrats. I think, people didn't know this, and Democrats denied it until we all saw it at the debate in June.
Yeah, so first, I appreciate you bringing up the president's health problems, and obviously our thoughts are with he and with the whole Biden family. They've been touched by cancer way too much, and he, of course, himself started the cancer moonshot and the focus on that. I can't comment on who knew what and when last year. That's not anything I'm privy to. But
you didn't think until the debate that there was anything amiss?
I mean, every time I interacted with him, it was as he had always been. So no, I did not see a problem. But I don't see him every day, and so. But I will say. He and the work that he did in his administration was most impactful of any modern president in terms of growing our economy, growing jobs, putting us on a pathway for success in this country, which, of course, then Donald Trump took office and started flushing all down the toilet.
I want to ask you one last question about Trump before we come back to Massachusetts, Amy Carnevale. It's hard to rank what concerns me most about Trump. I have to, probably number one, even though it's amorphous, is the cruelty factor. But I want to talk about the constitutionality issue that we talk about almost every day here. Take one dramatic example. The Supreme Court of the United States said, quote, you must facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from El Salvador. They didn't say, if he's not a member of a gang. They said you must facilitate his return. Donald Trump, in response to Terry Moran in an ABC interview, said, I could get him out of El Salvador. I think every normal person in America who is honest would say, of course, he could call Bukele on the phone and said, put him on a plane in 5 minutes. Forget Abrego Garcia's case itself. Does it not worry you that there is a president who, at minimum, is testing the ability to ignore a decision by the Supreme Court of the United States, and at maximum is just totally ignoring it?
Well, I just say this. I think immigration certainly was one of the top priorities of the president when he was running for office, and remains one of his top priorities now that he is in office. And
which has nothing to do with the Supreme Court decision that said you shall facilitate the return of this individual.
Right. And it's clear that a majority of the American people are behind him on these policies.
Which also has nothing to do with the Supreme Court. I mean, you know this very well. Yeah. I mean, the reality is the court said do it. He said I can do it, and he's not doing it. Does that, as an American, forget chair of the Republican Party, does that not concern you that any president is...
Look, I think the legal process is going to play itself out, and, the White House, eventually, they will get to a point where,
Does it concern you now?
I would say this. Look, it's going to play itself out, and the White House eventually, will comply with any order of the Supreme Court, and they'll follow that.
We're talking to Amy Carnevale and Steve Kerrigan. Want to come back to Massachusetts? What shape would you say a year out Maura Healey's in with the gubernatorial election next November?
I think she's in fantastic shape.
Why?
Because I think she has shown the people of the Commonwealth what true leadership is. She set a goal for our Commonwealth. She's the first governor in more than 20 years to cut taxes. She passed a $5.1 billion investment in housing, which one of the candidates on the other side kicked the can on for a number of years when he was the housing secretary. She's invested in, she hired Phil Lang and invested in the T, where the previous administration let 1,000 jobs sit empty.
He could be elected governor for anybody, probably
I don't think they'd even have a vote.
Yeah,
and stopped the slow zones and started the reinvestment in our public transit, which is critical for people of all economic levels. And she has done what she came to do, and she's going to continue to lead.
How immune is she from a serious challenge, Amy?
She is not immune, and in fact, we have 2 serious challengers.
Tell people
already
who they are.
announced.
I'm guessing most people don't know who they are. We do, but I'm guessing most people don't.
So the first Republican to announce was Mike Keneally. He served as Secretary of Housing and Economic Development in the Baker administration after turning around Lawrence Public Schools and a career in business before that. And the second to announce was Brian Shortsleeve. And Brian also served in the beginning of the Baker administration as head of the MBTA and also has had a successful career in private industry.
But you mentioned the Baker administration. I think it's fair to say neither of them, I don't think I know Keneally. We do know Brian Shortsleeve. Neither of them is Charlie Baker. I mean, just as from what I read in the last few days, Keneally is supporting a repeal of a gun law in a state that is wildly pro reasonable gun laws, and short sleeve was a big shot in fundraising for one of the most odious governors, at least in terms of people I know, Ron DeSantis. How do you overcome those kind of things? Not only that, how do you overcome the lack of popularity of the President of the United States, who I assume will be as big an issue here as who the two candidates are?
I think here in Massachusetts, we have a record of, as voters, differentiating candidates running for federal office versus state office. We've seen time and time again that voters in Massachusetts have voted in Republican governors.
Baker always separated himself from Trump, though.
Absolutely. You know,
you think these guys will?
I would say this. You know,
do you think these two will?
Absolutely.
You think
yes.
Short Sleeve and Keneally will say, I didn't vote for Donald Trump? Do you know if they did?
Keneally already said he did not.
Oh, I didn't know that. How about Short Sleeve?
He said he voted the Republican ticket.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I do think, you know, we're having a competitive Republican primary, which is the first time in a very long time that we've had that. And I do think kind of post-primary, certainly they'll emphasize more their moderate policy stances. So you'll see that kind of the tone and tenor change a little bit. But they both have a track record here in Massachusetts of being bipartisan and supporting many moderate stances. And as I mentioned, you know, Mike Keneally did actually. It was there was a kind of a video that was shared quite often at a Republican town committee meeting where he was asked if he voted for President Trump, and he said he did not.
Yeah, that is one of the things you notice about Massachusetts. The people that have succeeded as Republicans statewide obviously have been Bill Weld, you know, Baker, Cellucci.
Didn't Weld run against Trump briefly last round?
Yeah, well, that didn't go that well.
Oh, it didn't. That didn't, yeah.
But I mean, they're all sort
Romney
of... Romney. They're all sort of... I mean, Romney was probably much more more of a social conservative, not so much when he was governor here in Massachusetts. But they're all sort of the old-style Republicans, you know. And I often think if we had more old-style Republicans running for a statewide office, we wouldn't have such an overwhelming majority of Democrats up on Beacon Hill. So that's a hard thing for your party, to get people that are, you know, sort of normal Republicans to run, I think. No?
Yeah, so certainly it is a balancing act to recruit candidates who not only can win a primary but win a general election here in Massachusetts at the state level, but even at the local level to attract Republicans who are successful, have a successful background, and want to serve in public office, but to do so in a state that's currently a supermajority Democrat.
So here's what I do. Not that Amy asked me.
Okay. What would you do,
Jim? The Democrat, Healy will run, I assume, on a record, plus Donald Trump is the Antichrist. If I'm the Republican, I run against the legislature. And we know the least transparent, according to the Globe, the least productive legislature. I'd also run on question 1, which a mere 72%, I think including the whole Democratic infrastructure. Didn't you guys endorse question 1 at your convention or something?
There was a resolution related to it.
And it passed unanimously or something,
at
right?
a state committee meeting.
Right, state committee meeting. And the legislature, as we know, nonstop is doing everything they can to ignore this overwhelming popular mandate. How does Governor Healy, who with us, by the way, when she's with us every month, obviously carefully tries not to criticize the legislature, and can't blame her, she's got to work with them. Yeah. How does Healy defend the legislature on question 1, on their utter lack of transparency, and this brilliant reporting in the Globe about the kind of stuff they do behind back doors?
The cigar bar in the North End.
Everything.
I love that one.
Well, also promote a guy who's dating the chief lobbyist for the industry, whose bill he killed at their, one would argue, at their request. How does she defend them?
I think what she does in this campaign, what she will do in this campaign, is talk about her brand of leadership versus Trump's leadership. And by the way, both Mike Keneally and Brian Shortsleeve, make no mistake about it, are going to be going along with all of the MAGA ideas. There already are. I mean, the fact that Mike Keneally is trying to make sure there's not one person who is a voter in Massachusetts who wants to make sure that a Glock can go from semi-automatic to fully automatic. There's not one person
which is what the repeal of that gun law would do.
I mean, they're doing it to curry favor in a Republican primary with the NRA and all those folks. And then Amy just said it. She said they're going to take extreme positions to win the primary, but then moderate in the general election.
That's not exactly what I said.
You said they're going to take more moderate positions in the general election.
I think you have an opportunity to hear from them more about their
I think it would be great
positions.
if right now, faced with the economic cuts that the Trump administration is putting on Massachusetts in a vindictive manner almost, that either one of them who have a voice, even though not a lot of folks know who they are, they will, if they stood up to Donald Trump. But I guarantee you they will not stand up to Donald Trump. They will not say, keep your hands off of our hospitals, keep our hands out of our schools.
And if they can't stand up
if they can't stand up to Donald Trump, they are not getting elected.
Amy, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I would just urge your listeners to actually to have them come on the program and hear what they have to say.
We will definitely invite. We will 100% invite.
Yeah, and make judgments based on where they stand on their policy positions and what they have to say.
You know, we only have a minute left here, but I wonder, because I'm obsessed with this whole thing with the hospitals and the research and the diseases and Children's Hospital. I mean, how do your buddies that you talk about the politics of this, you know, if it's one thing that they want to go after the universities themselves, but it's this research that just seems so self-defeating.
So, you know, part of this, I would say, is the association with Harvard. And, you know, ultimately, we need to find a way as people and citizens in Massachusetts and people who care about research to kind of get around that. It's honestly become kind of a stigma among conservatitive, and so there.
You don't think Trump actually cares about
anti-dialogue? They have a stigma because their party's doing this.
Because they're the association with Harvard.
Oh,
and so I think research in Massachusetts and Harvard needs to find a way to get beyond that image that they're this elite institution.
They're going to make a deal with Trump. They'll deal with anti-Semitism. If he deals with a white supremacist he has dinner with. Is that a fair deal?
I mean, it's governing through grudges. Why should they have to come up with it? He should come up with it.
You guys should come back more often, particularly as... we'd love to see you both. Thank you so much.
That's right, because there's not that many Republicans, and here you are. So Amy Carnevale,
no, and by the way, we are going to invite both the candidates soon. Thanks for reminding us.
We've been speaking with the heads of Massachusetts political parties, Amy Carnevale with the Mass GOP. Thank you very much for your time. Steve Kerrigan with the Mass Dems as well. Coming up, we're going to open the lines this Monday, graduation weekend. How difficult is it for you when you are a young kid now to achieve the life you've dreamed of? David Brooks writes in the New York Times that Gen Z is the most rejected generation in history, in school, in work, and even on dating sites. It's really tough out there. Okay, you're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
For many Syrians, the fall of the Assad regime has inspired feelings of hope and renewal, but it's also been a time for reflection.
It's important for everyone to remember what had happened and how much destruction it took until one person gave up power and then we moved into something new.
How one photographer is remembering the Assad era next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Newport Mansions, presenting 11 historic properties and landscapes, including 7 National Historic Landmarks, tracing America's architectural development from the colonial era through the Gilded Age. Tickets at newportmansions.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're at the library tomorrow, Wednesday and Friday. Ask the AG, meaning Andrea Campbell, will be there for an hour on Wednesday at 1, and Mayor Wu will be with us from noon to 1 on May 28th. City is abuzz with college graduations, so we wanted to open the lines to check in on recent graduates having weathered pandemic learning to get a degree only to exit college among fears of a recession, global turmoil. David Brooks, as Marjorie said, writes in the Times, headlines. Young people looking for work right now are the seventh circle, I shouldn't laugh, of Indeed hell. It's so easy to apply for a job. Every posting gets hundreds, if not thousands of applications. You might get a form rejection letter back if you're lucky, or you might just get ghosted completely. Plus, 6 out of 10 are saying that they have to put off a major life decision. 75% say putting off buying a house. The lines are open at 877-301-8970 to call or text. Are young people facing more headwinds than ever before? It isn't just young people, it's everyone. New poll from The Guardian finds that more and more people, as I said, are reconsidering major life events such as having a kid or buying a home, waiting for whatever this hurricane of an administration is doing to calm down. Will it ever? So is your life on hold right now, particularly if you're a young person? Give us a buzz or a text at 877-301-8970. Now I will turn it over to someone who is obsessed with this topic. That'd be you.
Well, I'm obsessed with this topic because you think about it. Okay, people are on dating websites, right? And you could swipe, 50 times for someone that you were interested in a dating website and get no response. I mean, that's pretty depressing to be basically rejected over and over and over again. Then, because they have these common applications now, you can apply to all these schools. You can apply. I mean, Brooks was talking about people that are applying to schools that are really hard to get into, like Harvard, or at least it used to be really hard to get into. We'll see down the road.
That's a very
continues
good
to
point.
be. But schools like that. So if you apply to a place like Harvard, you're going to be expecting a rejection because almost nobody gets in. But because you can apply to 30 schools on this, and then you only get into like 2. That's really difficult. And then this story.
But that's more about, Brooks is talking more about competition.
Yes.
I think the painful part of this, I'm not saying that's not painful. If I was in that spot, I would feel great pain. I think the economic pain and uncertainty that it's causing is what is really frightening. Are there going to be any research jobs if you wanted to do research? Is the economy going to be such that you can afford to do X or Y, which you've been waiting to do until you got out of college or graduate
Right,
school?
but I think until fairly recently, you thought, certainly if you did get into some hot shot school, that you were in good shape. You're going to be able to get a job almost immediately when you get out of there. But lots of people don't. They can't even get internships, some of these people. They're applying for internships. And because we've made it easy to apply for these things, you can send out 200 job applications, 200 internship applications.
You read the Goldman Sachs thing?
Your pathetic dating site situation.
Did you see the Goldman Sachs thing in David
Well,
Brooks?
I mean,
315,000 applicants for 3,000 spots.
Almost nobody is going to get a Goldman Sachs.
So I'm not even going to apply. I was thinking of 877-301-8970.
But think about that compared to 20 years ago, or certainly more than that, when you have to handwrite applications where you'd actually talk to somebody on the phone instead of just getting a rejection.
Read Jamie's note.
Okay, phones are working.
No, I read an
article the other day about people who got to the phone interview stage of a new job only to realize they were talking to an AI job recruiter, not even a real person. Talk about crushing. I think it is kind of crushing to experience that. The point of this rejection thing is that people in their 20s have faced more rejection in their young life than people over 40 did in their whole lives.
Okay, so we want to hear.
60 in their whole lives.
We'd love to hear from young people, and we'd love to hear from the parents and friends of young people. And is this what is it? What's the line that you read a minute ago? It's the rejection generation. What is it again?
It's the most rejected generation.
Rejected generation. 877-301-8970 is our number to text or call.
My fiance and I feel like our life is on hold because of housing. We're both teachers. We feel stuck in the middle. We make too much to be looking for subsidized housing, but not enough to buy even a small ranch or a small cape anywhere near where we work. And here's a parent. As a family with 2 adult daughters, we are holding off everything right now. Every year we take a big vacation. That is canceled. We were considering buying a vacation place in New Hampshire, and that is on hold. And this is a little bit different. This is talking about work ethic. Yeah. But I can't believe I'm texting this. I'm Gen X, but I'm now officially the cranky old lady in the office who's frustrated by the work ethics of our younger hires. Perhaps the challenges lie on both sides. I don't know if that's true, but I think I'd be under the table if I had applied for 400 jobs And all I got was responses saying nothing.
Well, you don't have to worry
Or
about
no
being under the table
responses
because
at
most
all.
of them stay home and work from bed if they got a job. So you don't really have to worry about being under the table at work. 877-301-8970. This is horrible. By the way, Joel in Connecticut is anticipating our last half hour in which we're going to totally disgrace ourselves. Joel says, Jim, for women in their 20s, they, of course, have the Bellichic opportunities. We will get to that. Thank you very much.
Later in the show, we are going to get
show.
to that. But this Globe story that talking about the unease among the graduates.
Is that today?
It was from over the weekend, yeah. That the ceremonies and the speeches and what kids were talking about, the political turmoil surrounding the universities, whether it's the research jobs that you thought you were going to get that you're not going to get now, or whether it's about the discipline about protesting against what's going on in Gaza, that you can't do that at your school anymore without risking.
See, they withheld the NYU the speaker at the Gallatin School. They withheld his diploma because his 2 minutes speech was about it was a pro-Palestinian speech.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that crazy? You're not pro-Hamas, you're just pro-Palestine, where there's more attacks every day, and you get in trouble for that.
Let's take Danielle from Sutton. You're first on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show, Danielle. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Great.
So I'm still in school, but I'm a millennial, so I wouldn't say that Gen Z are the most rejected generation ever, because we've been locked out of our fields and not been able to buy a house and have been through recessions and all this.
How you dealing with that? How you feeling? How you dealing with that?
Well, I went back to school recently to get into environmental science.
Oh, no!
I was really good about that until this year, and I really wanted to work for the federal government doing environmental science, but now that's kind of on hold.
Oy, Danielle, it's a hell of a start for us. Thank you for making a call. Good luck to you.
Yeah.
How'd you like to be going back to school for environmental science?
Well, I mean, what Trump wants to do is build a big pipeline. Big pipeline is the front page of the Globe
She can
today.
work on that. I
That
don't
will
think
solve
that's
our
what
problem.
she intended.
Our number is 877-301-8970. We're talking about discouragement by constant rejection in the younger generation. Life on hold. We'll be right back after a quick break.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, defying gravity with renowned glass artist Josh Simpson and his wife, retired astronaut Katie Coleman. Plus, how a Chinese restaurant in Woonsocket, Rhode Island is renowned as a jazz and blues venue where the greats, including Dizzy Gillespie and Leon Redbone, have taken the stage. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, commemorating 250 years of history, independence, and innovation since the American Revolution. Learn more at massachusetts250.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about life on hold. For recent college graduates, Gen Z in general, as they try to enter the workforce, they're facing massive rejection. Just listen to this woman went back to school, the first caller a minute ago, for environmental science, applying to hundreds of jobs only to be ignored or worse, the AI-generated form rejection letter. And beyond Gen Z, the high cost of housing, lack of job prospects, economic uncertainty, which I think is the biggest by far, and the political turmoil from Trump/Musk, whatever. Are the kids all right? What about everybody else? 877-301-8970. What have you put off that you would ordinarily do? A major life thing. It could be a big vacation, could be the purchase of a house, it could be a big move. What have you put off as a result of the whole environment in which we're living in May of 2025?
Emily in Cambridge, thank you for calling.
Hi, Emily.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. I am a career coach, and I also teach career development at Boston University.
Great.
So this is a very, I'm actually at the gym, and I had to hop off and run out to call you guys.
Oh, We're glad you did. Thanks, Emily.
But so I've been doing this for 9 years. I have never seen a market like this in my 9 years. It is absolutely brutal out there. So everyone in every age group is hitting rejections, but what's happening is no one wants to train anymore. And so people who have more experience are getting the quote unquote entry-level jobs. And so the younger kids are really getting pushed out. And so they are not getting the experience. Talk about the COVID generation. They didn't get internships. Then they got thrown into the workforce. Now these younger kids can't even get internships, so they're not getting the experience. No one wants to train them. So forget about the dating rejections. The job search is absolutely debilitating for these kids.
So what do you say, Emily, since this is your job, what do you tell them to keep some level of hope alive?
Oh my gosh, it's such a trite answer, but networking. Truly. I tell the students, hit that alumni network. You paid for it, use it. So find people with whom you have something in common, who are willing to connect with you, get that leg up. I mean, it's the same advice I give to anyone in this job market. It's really about networking to help you get that level up. But for the young kids especially, I tell them lean into that and say, hi, fellow alumni, I'm young, I'm eager, I'm ready to learn. How can you help me? You've been in my shoes. And truly, I mean, again, I hate to say it, but it's really networking.
One last thing from me, at least. What's the psyche of these young people about whom you're speaking? How are they dealing with this?
Oh, it's so terrible. I'm a naturally optimistic, energetic person, so I try to imbue some of that into the classes. Yeah. But you can see the fear, you can see the depression. I mean, the political landscape. I have them do a feasibility study for their career where I say, where do you want to live? What's the average salary? What's the take-home pay? And does that fit into your 50-30-20 budget? And the depression that goes over their faces when they see just the cost of housing alone. And I say to them, you have to face the beast. You know, now you know what it's going to take. Now you can make it happen. But a lot of them are just, I have to move back in with the parents. I got to save up my money. I have to put things on hold, just like the article was saying. You know, I can't launch right away. I'm going to launch in a couple of years. But the last piece of advice I give them, if I may, is that the job you have now is not going to be your job forever. And you're going to pivot many times throughout your career. I talk to people in their 40s, 50s, 60s who are still pivoting. So take some of that pressure off, you know?
Emily, you
sound your first leap pad job.
Okay,
you sound pretty
Emily,
good at what you do
one
there.
quick thing from me. I'm getting texts about all the 20-somethings do is look at their phones and complain when they have to do extra work. What do you think about that? Plus, they're cheating on AI.
Where you can.
What?
What'd you say?
I say take comfort where you can.
I'm with you, Emily.
It's so hard.
Okay.
Emily,
All
you're
right.
great. Call us again sometime. Thanks so much. Go back to the gym. Good luck. So here's an anonymous texter. This is the ultimate. My wife and I are 30. We've been married for 2 years. We've been delaying starting a family due to cost. I was thankful to get a full scholarship to start grad school in engineering this fall, but we're considering moving to Europe for lower cost of living, more research funding opportunities, and respect for it. My cousin lives in Edinburgh, and it keeps sounding better every week. That isn't fixable in 2 years or 3 years.
That is the capitalist criticism, that capitalism needs to be regulated to work, and we no longer regulate it in the way that we used to. And so things are just insane. I mean, you look at the prices. What's the average price of a house in Boston
Almost
now?
900. I think of the 900,000. Single family.
So if you're trying to buy a house, I mean, how far do you have to go? You'd have
Edinburgh.
to leave. Yeah, you may have to go there. And think about these European countries that have, childcare stipends and education stipends. Colleges are free. We don't.
Research respected, as that texter just said a minute ago.
Yeah.
Here's another one, by the way, explaining why they're having a hard time. It's Andy from Lowell. As a college professor, I can attest to the fact that the use of generative AI to cheat on coursework has become endemic. If I were an employer, I'd be very wary of recent grads. Sadly, the young generation is accelerating their unemployability by relying so heavily heavily on AI. I certainly wouldn't hire somebody who is just going to use AI to do everything. Why would I pay somebody to do what I could get AI to do for free? Boy, that's a depressing.
Do you know in this bill that they're trying to get through the House?
I didn't until you told me. In Congress.
In Congress, that's right. That there's going to be a prohibition, if they succeed, on any state doing any regulation on AI for 10 years. And you know who's heavily invested in AI research?
Who would that be?
The Saudis.
Yeah. That is
Sarah,
unbelievable.
I know. I mean, don't you think we need to regulate AI? We need to regulate capitalism. I mean, we'd be in much better shape. I mean, many people have written that, and we don't do it.
We're talking about people, particularly young people, putting major life decisions on hold because of a variety of things, not just the state of the economy.
Sarah in Ipswich, thank you for calling.
Hey there.
Hi.
Hi.
Marjorie and Jim. Not a first-time caller, but calling as, I'm a mid-30 nurse practitioner at MGH. I've been there my whole career.
Wow.
My husband has an executive leadership position at a nonprofit serving military families. On paper, we make, this wonderful joint income. But I will say, with the economy, I've never worked more in healthcare as I do now. I have 3 different roles in primary care. And as someone who sees so many young people, I think people are struggling right now to feel hope. There's so much uncertainty. And for our particular family, we are really grateful. We have a home in Ipswich and we love our community. But I will say every couple of months I'm on Zillow looking at houses in Maine and New Hampshire, to think, how is this sustainable? We can't, we're putting off the decision to have another child because of daycare costs and groceries, and we don't go on vacations. And don't get me wrong, we are very fortunate. But it just seems like if you took our income, maybe 10, 20 years ago, I don't think this would all be the case.
Sarah, so you don't think that the $5,000 baby bonus would get you over the hump? When I heard that, I laughed. What is that, like 2 months of daycare? I mean, or maybe 3 months if you're lucky? I mean, they're crazy.
Right. And again, it's like we are doing so well on paper, but we pay $200 a day when our 2 children are in daycare.
Yikes.
Yeah. I mean, it's unsustainable. And again, we're unique. We're the richest country in the world, and we give people so little help in terms of family issues.
Sarah, that was a fabulous call, too. Thanks for sharing your predicament with us. We really appreciate it. So an anonymous texter said I pronounced Edinburgh wrong because it's not Edinburgh. It's Edinburgh. So to settle the difference, apparently we have Julian Miguel, who is one of our favorite people, to help us. What does Julian have to say, please?
Edinburgh. Edinburgh. Pretty straightforward once you know. Edinburgh.
It's the last time we're using him.
I don't think that's right.
Well, I mean, you don't think he knows? The texter says it, and then what do you think it is? Edinburgh?
I do.
Oh.
But I could be wrong.
Well, apparently we could. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Jen from New Hampshire. What do you think, Jen?
Hello, Jen.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
It's Edinburgh.
Wait,
Edinburgh.
what is it?
Edinburgh.
Well, you're the third one.
Edinburgh. Yeah, you're right. It's not Edinburgh. Edinburgh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you have you need the brogue in there in the end of it, it's Edinburgh.
Oh, I love that. That was actually excellent there, Jen. Thanks for doing that. What's up?
Huge Outlander fan, so I kind of heard it a lot. Anyway.
Okay,
so,
go ahead.
I have a senior in high school. She'll be graduating in 25 days. And we are literally taking her college path 1 year at a time. And she knows this because a lot of the things she's going into the STEM industry, and like her scholarships are women and STEM based. We have enough money to put through 1 year. I want to give her that experience of living in a dorm and having that. But she knows that every year it's in limbo. And so And that is you talk about their mental state of not knowing. I mean, back in the day, you planned for 4 years at a university, and you could start and finish within those 4 years. And it's like 1 foot in front of the other. It's 1 year at a time.
So that's her mental state. How's your mental state over this?
It's even just as frazzled because part of me has thought about sending her over to Europe. She wanted at one point to go over there, but I'm afraid of sending her over because of the political state over there and whether or not I can get her back. It's like everything is so volatile that I think that's why so many people are sticking their head in the sands with that whole idea of ignorance is bliss. Because when you take a step back and look at it, your anxiety wouldn't let you do anything. So we're just looking at it like, okay, we have the money for 1 year. You have the scholarship for 1 year. Let's do it 1 year at a time. And then next year we'll reassess. And we're just going to have to do that every single year and hopefully get to the finish line.
Another really thoughtful call, Jen.
Thank
you. Did you read Michelle in Chester, Vermont? Talk about our 30-year-old son and his
Tasmania. Yes, I just saw it.
And his 29-year-old girlfriend moved to Tasmania, wherever that is. Where is Tasmania?
Oh, that's where Dracula lives, isn't it?
So they can pay down college debt.
That's Transylvania. Whoops, I had the wrong country.
Save some money and get away from the orange menace. We miss them, but understand fully. How depressing are all these? I mean, it is unbelievable.
Well, I had just somebody that just said, where's a person that said they were double citizens of Canada, but they're afraid to get a dog in case they might get deported, even though they don't think they will.
What, they think they couldn't take the dog with them?
Well, I don't know. They're worried about getting sent to some kind of detention camp somewhere. I don't
This 30 and 29-year-old, I don't think you're reacting. Move to Tasmania,
I know, Tasmania.
So they can pay down their college debt.
Yeah.
The woman who just called a minute ago, Jen, year to year for college. They don't even know if there's the next year because they don't know if it's. I'm serious. I mean, listen to what these people. That other woman called. We're not sure. We're not having a second kid, at least for the time being.
Well, I absolutely. I hear that all the time from my daughter's friends. They can't. One kid. They can't afford a second kid. I mean, it's just too much money. Somebody else just texted a while ago, and I can't find it, but they went to Drexel, and that's one of those schools like Northeastern with a 5-year program, so you get internships in the summer.
What did they say about that?
Well, that helped a lot, that the kid did very well. They did get an internship at Goldman Sachs, which is pretty tough to get. But those co-ops that places like Northeastern get, I think are wonderful.
Is there a Tasmanian public radio, as far as you know, by the way, just in case we need a backup?
No, I had the wrong country. I thought Dracula lived in Tasmania.
How many people know the difference between Transylvania and Tasmania?
It's in Australia.
It is?
Yes. That's
Australia just got the Trump bump there, too.
Yep.
Canada, Romania, Australia, and there's one I'm forgetting, all got the Trump bump.
Ellen from Franklin, thank you for calling.
No sighing on the show, by the way.
Sorry.
You just sighed. You're not allowed to sigh on the air.
I'm feeling bad for people.
Ellen and Franklin, hi.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Well, I think I was talking over somebody, or somebody was talking over me.
No, you're good.
But, okay. The concept that I'm bringing up now is you haven't mentioned young men or women graduating now or going into college now should be looking into the ROTC units maybe into college, and then they would be graduating not only with wonderful training, not only with discipline, not only with an education, but also they would have a job. And then we would have a fighting force that we're going to be needing in a few years, and they would be ready and willing.
Yeah, well, it does. Certainly, you get that money to go to college after you get out of the military. There's no question about it.
It's not just the money, Marjorie. It's not just the money.
It's not just the money.
It's the overall discipline and mental readiness that the kids graduating now do not have that they would have in those. We are a Navy family. I know what I'm talking about, and we know that people graduating with the training that they have had in a ROTC unit with the chance and opportunities is it's incomparable.
Ellen, let me broach something. There is, I don't want to use his name without his permission. There's a Marine who Marjorie and I encounter several times a week, who's wonderful, and we love talking to about current events, who said he is embarrassed by who the commander-in-chief is in this country. And I don't need you to quarrel with him or agree with him. Do you think a young person who's thinking of joining the military will consider at all whether or not they feel comfortable serving under this particular president?
This particular president, no. He's made sure of that.
How so?
But the training they can get.
He's fired generals. He has taken away Secret Service protection from General Milley, one of the most respected members of the military in the last generation.
Yes.
Why do you say that? I know, but so why do you say that?
What do I say to it? Well, we knew that was coming. But the bottom line is they still do graduate, and sooner or later that individual will be gone.
I got it. Ellen, thank you. Very interesting thought. We appreciate your addition to the discussion. 877-301-8097. By the way, there's something called the Tasmanian Country Hour, which for short goes TAS Country Hour. We could be hosting that relatively soon, Marjorie. You never know.
That's right.
Depending how this PBS NPR funding thing goes.
Here's Kevin from Brookline. He says he's paying $700 a week for extended day for their little girl. Our rent is going up $500 at the lease renewal time and so on. It takes a toll on our marriage dealing with the stress, but we look at the kids to get perspective.
Can I just do the math there since it's one of my few strong suits? $700 a week is $3,000 a month.
That's right.
$3,000 a month is
that's
30,
extended day.
Is 36,
that's not even daycare.
Is $36,000 a year. You have to make roughly $52,000, $54,000 a year to be able to afford $36,000 of just extended day. Yeah. $50,000+ of income
we are
before
such
taxes.
Suckers in the United States of America. Every other wealthy country subsidizes parental leave. They subsidize childcare. They subsidize college. We're a bunch of suckers.
I'm with you.
And it's incredible to me that you talk about the working class people that voted for Donald Trump. What is he doing for them? He's not doing much, I would say.
Well, he's raising prices at Walmart, but then yelling at Walmart to not do them. By the way, an anonymous texter has very good advice for you and me. Wherever you two do decide to move, make sure you can pronounce it. I think, do you not, or at least know where it is.
I had Tasmania right.
Yeah.
Transylvania, I could say that.
You know what the problem is?
Edinburgh
What would happen if we both decided to do that? I ended up in Tasmania, you ended up in Transylvania, and we call each other and say, where are you?
Natalie in Burlington.
That'd be a nightmare.
Thanks for calling.
Hello, Natalie in Burlington.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
So I had a kind of a response to, I think it was Marjorie who just spoke about how, the younger generation, they should join the military. And that's like, I guess maybe.
Yeah, it was a caller actually who said it. A caller said it.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
That's
That's
fine. Go ahead.
Also, I wanted to say that I'm transgender, and recently, I've been trying for so long to join the military, and now with the Supreme Court putting a stay on the injunction so that Donald Trump's executive order can keep trans people out, as well as kicking and discharging current serving members, it's kind of, it's like there are people who do want to join.
Yeah.
Was my point.
Yeah.
Well, can I add something, Natalie?
Not appealing at all.
Add something to your point is trans people, as you just mentioned, not only can't join, but are being dismissed despite honorable service. And they're being dismissed because of the order of someone who's a draft dodger.
Yeah.
Trans people decide to serve at great personal risk to serve their country and are dismissed by a guy. How many times did he have that phony bone spur thing?
5 times.
5 times.
And I heard Stanley McChrystal, who's just got a new book out, the general that was served in the military for a long time, and he was talking about what a disgrace it is, the discrimination against trans people too. And he obviously is a general who's devoted his life to the military.
Natalie, thank you for the call. We appreciate it. Good luck to you. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Oh, we're getting a lot of people complaining about how we mispronounce Edinburgh, Jim.
Edinburgh.
Well, by the way, the person who says that she watched Outlander, whatever the hell that thing is called, said, what did you say? She and you said it's
Edinburgh.
Borough. But Julian Miguel
Edinburgh
says Edinburgh.
Here's a texter
he always knows.
Who says, is Tasmania in Australia or off New Zealand? We're getting different information.
It's the same. They're
here.
both the same thing.
Texter says, happy Monday. 5 more minutes of this, and I'm jumping off a bridge.
That's true. No, it's depressing. I mean, every single angle on this is worse than every other angle. Yeah. It's just horrible.
Well, as I just said to Amy Carnevale, what's really depressing me locally is the eds and meds thing. I mean, I don't want to... I want to have Mass General and the Brigham and Dana-Farber continue to be.
No, I think your focus on the research is huge. You know why?
It's huge.
It's doubly important because it's irreversible.
It's irreversible.
Once researchers decide, as we've discussed with other people,
else.
right to Europe or China or whatever, there's no coming back especially if they're treated well, for them or the next generation. So in any case,
okay.
Thanks for your calls were excellent, by the way, as were the texts, except for the ones who criticize us for how we pronounce Edinburgh or whatever the hell it is. Okay, enough, Julian. Thank you.
Okay, coming up after the new news, Amherst College's Ilan Stavans is next with a personal story of local impact from federal government slashing grants to the National Endowments of the Arts. They slashed his great book publishing program. He's going to tell us all about it next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Boston Ballet, presenting Spring Experience, a program that showcases the range and beauty of ballet today, featuring works by Mikko Niskanen and Jiri Killian, now through May 25th at Citizens Opera House. Tickets at bostonballet.org. Before the iPhone, the Polaroid camera let people immediately chronicle their lives. And for creator Edwin Land, everything changed in an instant. Watch American Experience, Mr. Polaroid, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Braude, head on Hour 2 of BPR. Amherst College professor Ilan Stavans has felt firsthand the impact of federal cuts to the National Endowment for the Arts, which provided funds to his publishing house, Restless Books. We'll discuss that and more.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Boston Globe food writer Kara Baskin, who's been documenting her recent journey with GLP-1s, putting her in good company with the 12% of all Americans who've taken one of these weight loss drugs. After we hear from Kara, we'll open it up to you at 877-301-8970. Have you felt the impact of these weight loss drugs? Have you managed to lose weight or kick a habit? Better manage your diabetes? Or do you feel a little uneasy about America's latest drug obsession? Call or text next on the second hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Quantity of food into Gaza and control all aid distribution there. He also said Israel will hold on to territory seized by ground forces in what he says will be a plan to, quote, taking control of all of Gaza. Intense shelling and airstrikes in northern Gaza has forced Palestinians to flee like 50-year-old Wael al-Kilani, who walked for hours with his wife and 7 children. He says the bombing was intense, with planes striking, artillery fire, and tanks. Hamas and Israel are currently holding indirect talks in Doha. Israel demands Hamas lay down its arms. Hamas wants international guarantees for a negotiated end to the war. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The yield on Treasury bonds rising after Moody's stripped the federal government of its AAA bond rating. Here's NPR's Scott Horsley.
Moody's was the last of the big 3 credit rating agencies to lower its estimate of the U.S. government's credit worthiness. The company warned that U.S. policymakers have failed to address a rising tide of government debt. The move comes as congressional Republicans are weighing an extension of the 2017 tax cut, which is expected to add trillions of dollars in additional red ink over the next decade. That additional borrowing is only partially offset by GOP spending cuts. Stock in Walmart opened lower after President Trump took to social media to say the retail giant should eat the cost of his new tariffs rather than raising prices. Walmart warned last week that some price increases are inevitable, given the magnitude of the president's import taxes. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Local politicians are sending their well wishes to former President Joe Biden after he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. Among those speaking out about it is Governor Maura Healey, who posted a message on social media saying that a cancer diagnosis is heartbreaking for any family and that she's sending her strength and support to Biden and all his loved ones. Senator Elizabeth Warren echoed the governor's sentiment, adding that Biden has worked for years to advance the cause of beating cancer and that, quote, we have his back in this fight. Biden's office says the president and his family are reviewing treatment options with physicians. Attorneys general from around New England vowed to stand tall against President Trump. The group held a town hall gathering on Friday evening, and the Commonwealth Beacon reports that they pledged that nothing is off the table when it comes to holding immigration officials accountable, lauded the courts for standing firm so far, and pointed at an ever-growing pile of litigation targeting the Trump administration's actions on everything from energy policy to anti-discrimination law. In sports, the Red Sox host the Mets at Fenway tonight. It's a 6:45 start. Let's hope the Sox are better than Mets and Mets. In the forecast, mostly cloudy, windy, and low 60s today. Cloudy and 47 overnight. Cloudy and upper 50s tomorrow. Clouds, and it looks like a lot of rain, drenching rain on Thursday. and that rain will extend into Friday. Oh, joy. 61 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow and Friday. The Attorney General Andrea Campbell will be with us on Wednesday from 1 to 2. And the Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, will be with us May 28th from noon to 1. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. We're joined now on Zoom by Ilan Stavans. He's a professor of humanities and Latin American and Latino culture at Amherst College. His latest book is... Okay, Jim. Lamentations of Nezahualcóyotl. I'm looking at him as I speak. He's nodding in agreement. You never know if he's being nice or not. Nahuatl Poems. He's also the publisher of Restless Books, which is our topic today. An independent nonprofit publisher devoted to championing essential voices from around the world. Ilan, it's good to see you. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be with you guys.
Well, before we get to the terrible story about what happened to Restless Books, you always choose a word. And today's word, I believe, is patronage?
Patronage, yes.
Yeah, why'd you choose it?
I think this is a crucial moment in America. The funding that is coming from the NEA, the NEH, the National Institute of Science, and other governmental entities is drying up. This was one of the great efforts of Lyndon Johnson in the 1960s, 65, to help the arts and science and transform this country. We have artists have benefited from patrons from Greek and Roman times to the Middle Ages. Shakespeare couldn't have done it without the Lord of Southampton. But that seems to be vanishing now. And it's because the patrons understand perfectly that they can control, they can assert power on what is and isn't inserted in the arts and in science.
So tell us what Restless Books is, Ilan Stavans.
Restless Books is a 12-year-old independent nonprofit publishing house based in Brooklyn, New York, and in Amherst, Massachusetts, devoted to translating extraordinary works of literature from all over the world and to give immigrant voices from around the world as well a channel to enter the United States. This is a country with very limited numbers of translations that are coming from other languages. And what Restless has tried to do for this decade plus is feature translations as a way to connect us with different cultures, to show us that we are not an island, that we are part of a larger community.
And you published I didn't realize this, you published quite a few books that come in and get translated. Give us an idea of what those are.
Marjorie, we have published, I think, 250 books to date, 60 different countries, 35 different languages. They are novels, short stories, memoirs, plays that come from Finland, from France, from South Africa, from Argentina, from Mexico, from all over. The quality is high, and the reception from students and critics is superb as well.
So can you survive these cuts?
Whoa, let's talk. We haven't gotten to the cut. Let's talk about them.
I'm
what
sorry.
happened?
I thought we got to the cut. Sorry.
What happened on May 2nd? You got a communication from the National Endowment for the Arts saying what, Ilan?
On May 2nd, Jim, we got, as about 200 other nonprofits nationwide, a letter. It was Friday night, 9:30, 8 p.m., announcing that the support that they have given us this year and for the last 5 years was being rescinded, canceled. In our case, $25,000. This amounts to helping support 5 different books, translations from different countries. We had signed a contract. We had gone through the due process, being vetted by a committee that looks at this.
Institutions and HBCUs and tribal communities and Asian communities. So that's just baloney, I guess?
I think it's baloney. I think it's the beautiful word to describe this contradiction. It makes no sense to us. They are trying to curtail diversity, but that letter, as you mentioned, suggests that what they are trying to do is support this diverse group of people. And in the case of Restless and of many other publishing houses and theater groups and other art institutions, we serve those varied communities. So it's a contradiction in terms. I don't quite understand it.
By the way, we've raised this a few times. We have to get to the bottom of this at some point because, as I said to Marjorie this morning, one of the things about Trump, when he goes off on whatever it is, whether it's the motivation is racism or classism, whatever it is, he rarely tries to cover his tracks. Here he appears to be covering his tracks. The language we're reading, which we've read, does anyway. I think most people would agree if your mother needs to get in a well, no, I guess they wouldn't know. I was going to say if your mother needs to go to a nursing home, but I guess that's not true. Yeah. Stupid statement. There's certain things that military. I think most people would agree that the government should fund a military, but it seems to me through the years we've done a horrible job describing why the government should be in the arts business at all. Why should it be?
Well, this is a great question, Jim. And 2 weeks or so after receiving that letter and pondering this and lamenting the fact that the money is no longer going to be around to support these books, I'm thinking myself, maybe this is a moment in which we in the arts realize that in such polarized country where whoever is in government is going to try to use the funds in order to perpetuate the ideology in power, maybe it is time, and I might be agreeing here with Trump, not to get money to any form, and that we in the arts have to go to different types of patrons that are foundations, that are individuals, but are not ideologically driven like the government is. It used to be, again, from Johnson on, that the money that taxpayers gave should go in part to the arts. But we are so divided, and we are always manipulating how those funds might be used or not. Maybe this is a moment for us in the arts to start thinking differently how to approach fundraising.
Do you really believe that? Wait. You actually believe?
I can't believe that I'm believing this. Yes.
But the thing is, some of this, there's no ideological bent to it, like the music instruction for kids, like the Project STEP, which we talked about in Boston, which is just giving, so kids can learn a music in an instrument in poor schools. And the other thing, Ilan, is the United States is one of the only wealthy country that doesn't support the arts. I mean, you go to Europe, we don't support, we were just talking about this, we don't support quality of life like childcare expenses or like college expenses or like art expenses. You know, other countries manage to do it.
And manage to do it beautifully. In Europe in particular, you see the separation between what the ideological vision of whoever is in power has and how the arts need to be supported. Maybe what we need to be doing here, Marjorie, is not so much cutting the funds, but creating a kind of bridge or an abyss between how the taxpayers' money is given to the arts and how the politicians always have the temptation of putting their hands on them and putting their labels and saying that this is going to help promote their particular vision of the world. That is what I'm so distressed by.
Let me say that I'm about to as powerfully disagree with you as I can. I'll get to that in about 30 seconds. You know, this BS about ideologically driven art, when you read documents, as we did last night in anticipation of talking to you, from either Project 2025 or one of those, the Heritage Foundation, that is still citing Piss Christ from, I think it was I looked it up last night, 1987 from Serrano, and something that Robert Mapplethorpe did on a tour 30 years ago. You know that it's a really thin reed that they're sticking to. And here's where I want to say that I think you're making a big mistake, and I know that you always look to me for guidance, Ilan, so I'm gonna give it to you. It's a slippery slope here. Let's assume you decide arts funding from the federal government through the NEA. Maybe this gives us an opportunity opportunity to be looking at alternative funding. Well, it trickles down into what are the first programs to go when public schools are at risk?
The arts.
Arts programs, arts and music, fund them on your own. What does that mean? Upper middle income families can afford to buy their kid a saxophone and an art class, and low and moderate, and you know all this 10 times better than I.
Leave me some time to defend myself here.
Go ahead, defend yourself, Ilan Stavans.
I am absolutely a supporter of all those forms of art,
I'm sure you are.
And I think that it is precisely the segments of the community that get the least attention that should be getting those funds. My problem is when politicians put their hands in them and how they manipulate them. I do believe that the next government that is going to come is going to try to push it in the opposite direction, and then back and forth like a pendulum. We have to find a middle ground where the arts continue to thrive, that they benefit from patrons, including the government, but that they are not manipulated every time. This used to be what Mexico was about. Every 6 years, a new president comes in, erases what happened before, and has a new agenda, only to be erased again by the next president. We need continuity. Arts need to thrive through that continuity.
Well, but isn't that what you should be advocating for? As Marjorie said, and you agreed with, of democracies, we probably have a lower governmental support for the arts than virtually any, if not every. And maybe we should be trying to figure out what's the way to separate these things from political interference. And by the way, I'm not saying it's going to work because, for example, the reason the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was created, the reason I used to work in legal services, the Legal Services Corporation was created as a quasi-independent, theoretically providing a buffer between the politics of the then president and the work that you do, which is obviously not working so well. But I think that, I know you agree, that government has such an important role on some levels supporting the arts that I think not giving on any front is probably the best way to combat this.
And in going back to what Marjorie was saying, compared to other countries, we do have a very vigorous philanthropic universe that through individuals or organizations in general do give a lot of money to the arts. That is a very healthy approach. It is the part that comes from the government that is so easily pushed in different directions that needs to be revisited in a neutral way. The arts in this country are the inner voice that we all have. Without the arts, we don't have a soul. The question is how to retain that health when the ideological swing comes back and forth.
What's going to happen to Restless Books?
Restless Books will continue to thrive because the community has lived up and given almost the $25,000 that we were missing, and that mostly that love. It's ironically what the Trump administration is generating is a stimulation for love of the arts that comes in all kinds of ways, going to the theater, reading books, and giving money to them. And my statement is the Restless will survive as long as people just open a book and are ready to be enchanted by another narrative that shows them that life somewhere else thrives as well, and it's exquisite. Open a book, change your mind. That is a form of resistance.
And the thing I thought was so fascinating about Restless Books, we touched on it before, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you get books from other countries written in different languages, talking about different cultures and different kind of poetry, and then you translate them.
You ever seen this book right here?
Yeah, so that's right.
That's one of them.
That's right. That's one of them right there. But
this is a book, by the way, that was translated by Ilan Stavans.
But give us some other examples. What other countries are books coming from?
The countries are very broad. Here's a partial list. Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Rwanda, Namibia, South Africa, Korea, Japan, China. There's a lot from indigenous countries.
So all over the place.
All over the place. The purpose is really to offer a big palette, a big offering to show that literature is thriving, really, and connects us.
You know what I wondered too? You said that, I think you said you got your text message somewhere in the 9 o'clock hour, your email rather, and somebody else said they got theirs at 11:50 at night. This is odd. Usually, you think you get these kind of emails during.
It's like you're a journalist. News drops on Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Who's going to know on Saturday morning unless you go out and drum up interest in this? It's going to be in the Saturday morning paper, if at all. And no one's even going to know that it happened.
Well, usually, even with that, it will happen at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. It's late at night. I mean, who are they coming from? Where are they coming from?
I think that is one of the messages, Marjorie. It's not only what the statement is saying, but it's the time in which it is arriving. A statement that cannot be properly pondered at that time by the staff, by anybody who sees it. And of course, it ruins your weekend. You are already thinking about it all the time. It's the type of thing that Trump does very easily. Instead of firing somebody directly, he sends a tweet in the middle of the night telling them that they are unworthy and they can't respond. They forget the boundaries of office hours, of what is the protocol. To me, that moment of arrival speaks as loudly as what the content of the letter was about.
You know, can I get back to being troubled by your position, if I may, and go beyond the arts? I worry, and I understand there's a distinction, but maybe not to them. If one makes the case that being defunded, admittedly relatively small money in the grand scheme of things, I think it's several $100 million nationally in the National Endowment for the Arts. Why can't, what is it again? What is it?
200 million plus.
Okay. Why can't the argument be made, let's go to Marjorie's major concern 24/7, is healthcare research. Why not make the argument, extend the argument and say, well, maybe this is an opportunity, instead of worrying about the politicization of healthcare by people like RFK Jr. and Donald Trump, let them seek funding in the private sector. Let them go to pharmaceutical companies and other, wealthy foundations, and let health research institutions, including universities that may be the conduit, like Harvard is, for example. Isn't that a natural extension for those who want to defund whatever they disagree with and say, just go find the money?
I think you're misrepresenting my view here.
Okay.
I am not against giving all that money. Patronage is essential for the support of the sciences and of the arts. It is when the patrons realize that they can control you and they can put you in a bind that creates a sphere where you as an artist can no longer create authentically. So I am not advocating for the end of this. I'm advocating for the creation of some kind of neutral approach where the new administration doesn't take over and manipulate this money to push it in this or that front.
So as that moment, we await that moment and hope that moment comes. Do you worry that in the arts world there'll be the same level of nauseating anticipatory obedience as we've seen in some parts of the journalism world? We just read, as we went on the air, we've talked a lot about Shari Redstone owning Paramount and directing CBS News, which Paramount owns, to tone it down on Trump so she gets her merger or purchase for multi-billions of dollars. The head of CBS News, who had the courage to side with Bill Owens, who's the producer who resigned from 60 Minutes, and against Shari Redstone's position, resigned this morning, I'm assuming under pressure. How about that? Do you worry about that in the arts?
I believe this is a jolt into the art community to make it understand its activist power at a time when this administration doesn't believe that the arts play an important role. The fact that we will have to fight for each dollar in more competitive ways, going to other sources, will help us focus and see who we are. I don't believe we are going to be seeing the disappearance of many institutions, but I think some of them will have to struggle in this. But struggle in the arts is it's part of the mechanism. I sometimes do believe, Jim, that the arts can be too against everything, just for the joy of being against. And I think that one can be more critical of the critical approach.
You know, we were talking earlier with our listeners about kids coming out of college now that are finding they're worried about the economy, they're worried about getting jobs, they're worried about climate change, they're worried about all these things. They've been rejected a lot between getting rejected by colleges, getting rejected by dating websites, getting rejected for internships. You think of Harvard, Yale, Stanford, probably the top universities in the country, but you think of Amherst and Williams as the top colleges in the country that used to be kind of the golden ticket. You know, once you get into one of these places, you are going to be set. I wonder if you get any sense from the students up there that this is somehow different, whether it's Trump, whether it's the pullback to all these research jobs, which some Amherst kids may have been headed for. What's your sense of what they're thinking?
Marjorie. I think this is a moment for this graduating generation that feels different to the previous years. It feels that many of the opportunities that they were offered are now drying up.
Yeah.
This is an overly protected youth. And getting a taste of defeat. One of my big criticism always of campus life is that everything is success. We give them A's. We celebrate them for this. We don't always prepare them for the defeats that life is made of. And going out of college and realizing that not everything is a bed of roses is not a bad idea. It happened to many of us. You have to find your place. I'm not advocating for pain, but pain is part of life anyhow, and this generation will have to find its place in a different ecosystem than the ones that came before. I think it's going to be for the good.
By the way, if you want to learn about Restless Books, maybe support it, but at least learn about restlessbooks.org. Is that not correct, Ilan?
Absolutely. And hopefully the listeners will help you reach that gap of $25,000 by donating.
Ilan, one quick, before when we were talking with listeners about that, we got a lot of text messages from people saying, oh, this is the get a trophy for every soccer game you show up to generation.
What is?
That this generation coming out of college right now, that they were the coddled children. So maybe there's something to that. So I don't know.
I don't think they deserve this. Ilan, it's great to see you as always. Good luck.
It's always a pleasure. Keep this great show going.
You're a kind soul.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad things I hope are going to turn out okay for you.
They will. We'll fight. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Ilan Stavans, Professor of Humanities and Latin American and Latino Culture at Amherst College and publisher at Restless Books. His latest books is, Jim, want to give us the...
No, I'm going to let you do it.
Lamentations of Nezahualcóyotl.
That's pretty close.
Nahuatl poems. It's a tough one for me to read, for anybody to read. Anyway, okay, after a quick break... what happens when a food writer takes Ozempic? We're going to talk with the Boston Globe's Kara Baskin about her experience. She took Ozempic, what she thinks about it, and then open the lines to hear from you. Have you taken these weight loss drugs? Have friends or family members taken these weight loss drugs? What is the impact on their eating desires? And, we talk to people that know a lot about these drugs who say they also curb your desires for other things, like online shopping, or maybe gambling, or maybe liquor. We're going to talk about weight loss drugs up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In their new book, Original Sin, journalists Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson chronicle what they say is Joe Biden's cognitive decline during his presidency and efforts to hide that decline.
Having a former member of the cabinet say that they didn't have confidence that he could be commander-in-chief at a moment of crisis, that was a moment that made me pause.
He.org/everyday. and the Boston Public Art Triennial, bringing new public artworks and events open to the public to neighborhoods across Boston.
And Brad is streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The Attorney General is with us. When is she with us again?
Wednesday,
thank you, from 1 to 2. And the mayor is with us on
May 28th.
Thank you. I'm glad someone's paying attention. Very well done there. It's very impressive. Over 140,000 patients in Massachusetts were prescribed GLP-1 medications for weight management last year. These so-called miracle drugs were initially intended to treat diabetes, and they somehow work magic in curbing your appetite, which is great for losing weight. But what if your job depends on eating? That was the question Kara Baskin asked herself in a recent column in the Globe. She's a food and parenting writer who recently started taking the GLP-1 Zepbound. She joins us now on Zoom to share her experience using these new wonder drugs and how she's balancing it with her career. By the way, after we talk to Kara, as Marty said, we're going to take your calls on these drugs, whether you're taking them, not taking them, contemplating them. Kara also writes the Parenting Unfiltered newsletter and a column for the Boston Globe. Hello there, Kara. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
Very well.
Great to talk to you. You wrote a great piece a few weeks back about your adventures with Ozempic, the weight loss drug. So why did you decide, as Jim said, you are a food writer, so you're going to go out and try all this food. Why did you decide to take the plunge?
I'm a food writer. I'm also a perimenopausal woman who is not having luck any other way. So I will say I don't take Ozempic. I take Zepbound, and they are different drugs. So Ozempic is prescribed more for diabetics. Zepbound is more of a weight loss drug. So I take Zepbound. And it was really, I was doing a lot of public events, and I really, to be totally honest with you, I was tired of seeing pictures afterward and not liking how I looked. It was really vanity. It was as simple as that. And I've been on it for 8 weeks and I feel great. It's been wonderful.
Didn't look like
there it goes.
Potatoes. I can't believe you actually look like a sack of potatoes. Kara, that seemed
I was
to be
next to this like stick there. I mean, it sounds so vain, but it really, I'm 5'1" on a good day. I'm a small framed person and I've had 2 kids. I'm not getting any younger. And I thought if there's something that will help me lose weight when exercise and diet alone aren't doing it, why not try it? And my doctor barely blinked. He said, yeah, go for it.
But by the way, just so you know,
pounds,
I am a much taller sack of potatoes. So most days, so just so you know, you're not alone. So, but you write in your piece that you got the prescription and you hesitated. Explain the hesitation and then explain, to use Margie's word, the ultimate plunge.
I was hesitant for all the reasons I think anyone would be. Well, first there was like I said, it was sort of a vanity thing. And I thought, am I being somehow anti-feminist or, overly vain by doing this? So there was a little bit of mental hesitation. And then there's a very real physical hesitation of the side effects. And there are side effects. Some people have really bad GI distress. I do not. It feels a little bit like the first trimester of being pregnant the day after I take the shot, but it's not terrible. But there are side effects. You can get gallstones, you can get pancreas issues. Nothing is without risk. So it sat in my fridge for a couple of weeks. And then finally, my husband gave me the shot. It's like a little EpiPen injector. And it was really anticlimactic. But the weight started falling off right away. I've lost 2 pounds a week. And I've been on it for 8 weeks.
And
so
what you said in your piece, which I find hard to believe, that you ate 1 piece of pizza. I mean, who can do that?
It's so weird. It really does. And you said, Marjorie, earlier, it suppresses a lot of things.
Yeah.
It suppresses your appetite, but it really just tamps down the need for more. So I think we've all been there. You're out for drinks with friends and you have 2 glasses of wine. It's like, oh, why not have 1 more? That doesn't happen. Or, you have a whole sleeve of cookies in front of you. I'll just have 1 and then you can step away. It's very easy to stop. And so they're studying it for alcoholics and gamblers and all sorts of stuff.
So what's going on in your head when you have that sleeve of cookies and you have 1 and it tastes really good and it's really pleasurable? What is it? Did your stomach feel full or
that's exactly what it is. You feel like if you were to eat 1 more cookie, it would start coming out your eyeballs and your ears. Like you are full. Okay. Because it delays your stomach emptying. Your stomach just digests more slowly, so you feel more full. And I was one of those people, like I wasn't a huge overeater, but I was sort of like, if something is good, I want more of it. Who wouldn't? And I never felt totally full. And now I feel full.
Well, Kara Baskin, that's where you and I leave company. I've been full since 1982, as far as I know. I'm not joking. I mean, and I really, are you the first person I've spoken to? I'm trying to think who's taken the drug, which is fairly shocking.
I hope we speak to a few more in a few minutes.
But everyone's on it, Jim. They just don't tell you.
But Kara, I think there's truth in that, and there is nothing to be ashamed of. But I think you're probably right. But in a moment of seriousness, I am an anxiety eater too. And I often eat and think about eating, not because I'm particularly hungry, but because it's calming for me. So I know you're not a scientific expert, but you are someone who's taken the drug. So would someone like me say I'm full after whatever you said, 10 fries rather than the whole carton, and then stop eating? Or would my emotional need or whatever keep me going?
So that's interesting. So I'm the opposite. So you can always tell when I'm feeling panicky because I get really skinny. But luckily I've been happy. So I was getting really not skinny. I think it works the same on everybody because physically, I'm telling you, you cannot eat one more bite. You will feel like so full. It is an unpleasant sensation to overeat.
So were you worried at the beginning of this thing? And I'm sure we said at the beginning, this is what you do for a living.
Right.
Were you worried that not only would your appetite disappear, but maybe your taste kinds of thing disappear?
Yeah.
How worried were you about your career?
I was risking my career all for vanity.
Maybe.
I mean, no, because here's the thing. And some of my favorite food writers and editors, the way that the professionals do it and stay in these jobs for a long time is they don't overeat. You try a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
A taste of this and a taste of that. And so that's what I can do now. And actually, to be honest, you appreciate it that much more. So I went to Zorito. Have you been to Zorito, Jamie Bissonette's new place?
No.
Vegan Health?
Oh,
So
yes,
good.
actually, yes. I'm sorry, yeah.
So good. I went on Friday with my husband, and it's tapas, so it lends itself to just sampling little things. But I had a little bit of everything. And I came home with a little doggy bag that I had for lunch, and it was lovely. I still enjoyed the food. I just didn't have as much of it. But it still tastes the same.
So I don't know if you go over to the Encore Casino in Everett and blow $2,000 on a Friday night.
Oh, every night, yeah.
Yeah, or if you shop more than you should or buy more than you should. But people we've talked to and what I've read says that people who are compulsive shoppers are less compulsive, or gamblers
all
can control themselves.
Yeah.
Have you noticed?
Studying it it's true. I mean, I don't have that compulsion, but I know that they are studying it for that, and I think it could do amazing for alcoholics too.
Yeah.
To tamp down that craving. It really just sort of, all I can liken it just puts a little damper on it.
And you don't find that you feel. You said you feel a little nauseous the day after the shot, but then you feel okay.
The next day, Marjorie, it's like first trimester, a queasy, I won't go into the details. It's not the best day. But then I always take my shot on a Monday on purpose because I want to not feel bad on the weekends. I want to have my weekends. And so by Wednesday, I'm feeling back to normal, but my eating is way, way curbed. And physically, I mean, people come up to me and they're like, wow, you look really different. Not really different, but you can see it in your face. You can see it in my body.
By the way, we're going to get to your calls in a second after we talk to Karen. It's 877-301-8897. You can start calling now. Do you have any regrets? It sounds like you don't. Do you?
About taking the Zepbound?
Yeah.
I wish I'd started it sooner, to be honest with you.
Really?
The only thing, it's not a regret, but it's a question. I wonder, I had a very specific goal. I wanted to lose 30 pounds, and I've lost 15 of those pounds so far. So I wonder what will happen once I get to my goal weight, because I don't need to keep losing more and more and more. If I'm just going to microdose, I don't know what happens once you get to
How long did you lose 15 pounds, Kara?
It took me 8 weeks. So I've lost 2 pounds a week, which is standard on that drug. Yeah.
And you said in your piece that your insurance, Blue Cross, pays for it.
$25. I don't know if they're going to do that forever, because the Globe just reported last month that they might not. Everybody's on it, right? They're covering it for so many people.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can continue to afford to, but right now it costs me $25. And the most important thing, though, I mean, the weight loss is fine, but I feel more energetic. It's easier to exercise because I don't hurt. Like, my knees don't hurt, my feet don't hurt. So it's a domino effect.
And you also,
it really is, it's healthy.
You also talked about heart disease in your family too. Yeah. So that's
Oh, that's why I got it. So that's the thing. So not everybody can just ask their doctor for it, but I checked 2 boxes. So technically my BMI made me overweight because I'm tiny. I'm short. So anything, you could be any weight and I'd be overweight, but I classified as that. And my family does have a heart history. So those 2 factors made insurance cover it.
Yeah. Kara.
So bottom line, you're a happy camper.
I'm a happy camper, and it's fun to shop for clothes now. I feel better, and I'm still doing my food writing, and enjoying my food, just less of it. Really.
Kara Baskin, thank you very much.
I want to be you when I grow up.
I love this column. I love your columns about kids issues too, and the one you wrote.
Oh God, we could talk. I could talk to you about that all day.
Yeah, well, we can do that again because you write great stuff about parenting too. Thank you so much for joining us.
Be well.
See you later.
Yes. We've been speaking to Kara Baskin, who writes the Parenting Unfiltered newsletter and column for The Globe. After a quick break, we're going to take your calls on these weight loss drugs. Have you tried them? Do you think about it? If you have, what does it mean to you? Do you feel okay about them? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The number is 877-301-8970.
In 2008, at the peak of the Great Recession, people started having fewer kids.
Which means 18 years later, right now, there are fewer students going to college.
This is known as the demographic cliff.
I'm Kurt Carapezza from GBH News.
And I'm John Marcus from the Hechinger Report. On our podcast, College Uncovered, we stand on the edge of the demographic cliff and take a look at how universities are dealing with this catastrophic problem.
Listen to College Uncovered wherever you get podcasts.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And The Huntington with The Light in the Piazza, a new production of Adam Guttle's Tony Award-winning score and Craig Lucas's profound book. May 8th through June 15th at the Huntington Theater, huntingtontheater.org. And Heights Crossing, an assisted living and memory support community offering residents experiences aimed at promoting independence, inspiring curiosity, and encouraging connection with others. More at heightscrossing.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We just spoke with food writer Kara Baskin, who's also behind the Parenting Unfiltered column at The Globe. You failed to ask her what you said we're going to ask her while she's eating less. She now hates kids. I don't know if you thought because of the drug. It's horrible. That's not true, by the way.
Only kidding.
A very weak joke. About her personal experience with weight loss drugs. Now we're turning it over to you. Have you taken a GLP-1? What's been the outcome? Have you thought about doing it? Do you have no interest in doing it whatsoever? If that's where you are, why? Do you just not need it? 877-301-8097. You know what I was shocked by is, obviously it wasn't in Kara's case, 65%, in an NPR story we read this morning, 65% of people who start taking GLP-1s stop. Were you surprised that the number was as high as it was?
Well, I guess they had very serious symptoms.
Side effects.
Yeah.
Even though she did not.
This woman talked about giving a toast at a wedding and then going in and spending the rest of the wedding reception in the bathroom, sick to her stomach. On the other hand, we have texts. I lost 114 pounds on Mounjaro, the best thing I've ever done. Zach from Salem started Zepbound 3 weeks ago, took a shot this morning. My insurance company, Aetna, announced their coverage will end in July, and then he'll have to pay $1,000 a month, which is a lot of money. So anyway, what do people think? Suzanne in Plymouth, thank you for calling.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, how are you?
We're good, thank you.
Good. Yes, I started on Zepbound about 6 weeks ago. I work as a nurse, and I gained a lot of weight during COVID just from working so much. I've lost about 12 pounds in 5 weeks. Wow. I feel great. It actually helps with curbing alcohol cravings as well.
Really?
That happened during COVID, too much of everything. And I just didn't have time to go back to the gym, and I have 30 pounds to lose, and the side effects are about the same as what Karen talked about. You do feel a little nauseous the first day, but I have high triglycerides, high cholesterol, and a little bit of sleep apnea. So Harvard Pilgrim, based on those three things, approved it for me. And I'll be on 5 milligrams next week. And I like it. I was scared to take it.
Susanna, when you say the alcohol craving, does that mean you don't want to get drunk, or the wine or the scotch or whatever you're drinking doesn't taste as good, or what does it mean?
It just makes you crave less of everything. It makes you more focused on, I might have one drink instead of 4.
Yeah.
Or, I might have one slice of pizza instead of eating the whole pizza. It just makes you function better all around.
Have there been any downsides for you, Susanna?
Just the nausea, like your guest was saying the first day. And then some GI upset, but I haven't had anything else go on. But a good question is, when I am done and I lose the 30 pounds, what do I do then? So I plan on getting on an exercise program and making sure I follow up with that.
Susanna, stay in touch with us. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. You had a guest on from Brown University a couple of months ago that was talking about all of this, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, he was very good. That was Paul Revel's son talking about the
Nicholas
research
Revel.
into people learning to control other addictions that they're involved with. Listen to this one.
He was great. Susanna, thanks.
Thank you for
Appreciate
the call. Here's another Zeb-bound person. I've weighed everywhere in my adult life between 150 and 260 pounds, continuously monitored my diet, exercise, worked out, nothing helped. My brain is no longer continuously preoccupied with food since I started the Zeb-bound. I'm able to focus on what I need to do to maintain a healthy body. They've lost 15 pounds in 2 months without having to be constantly obsessed with meal planning and calorie counting, which I think is going to be really difficult because every time you start talking about food, what do? You get hungry, right? So if you're planning constantly, your meal planning and calorie counting, I think it makes it, I would guess, even harder to control yourself because you're thinking about food all the time.
I've done that very rarely. I think the only time I wasn't doing that my whole life was when I was between 4 and 5, essentially. It's all I've done my whole life.
Okay.
Susan Cranston says, I've been on Zep-bound and found a remarkable difference in how I think about food. I think about food less. I, by the way, think about food all the time. And that's the thing that, I make different choices and in different portions. I experience side effects, manage them. My life is important to me. The cost is prohibitive. I've reached the $2,000 Medicare limit for the year, and it's worth it to me. The cost reflects the overt greed of the pharmaceutical industry. That is totally true. At the beginning, when Ozempic, for example, first came out, we compared the prices in Western nations, United States versus Canada, United States versus Germany, and in some cases it was as much as 10 to 1.
Well, Donald Trump says he's going to bring the prices down.
I think
we'll
that's
see if that happens.
Any day now,
Peter from Beverly, thank you for calling.
By the way, before you go, Peter, and read what the anonymous texter just
There's a new oral version coming out. It can be mixed into a liverwurst tube, so perfect for Jim.
Believe me, I'm there. Hello, Peter. Sorry to interrupt you. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. I've been taking Mounjaro now for probably since last October. And I'm on Medicare, and they're covering most of the cost of it. I had it because I checked all the boxes for type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol and heart disease, and I have lost about 45 pounds on it.
Wow.
How you feeling?
I feel like $1 million. I feel like I'm a kid again. It's amazing how good it feels when you're not carrying around that extra 5-gallon bucket of water on your back. It's fabulous stuff, and I've got 0 side effects. The cost isn't that bad because Medicare is covering it, and I've hit that $2,000, or I will hit that $2,000 limit soon. I'd love to see it become a little bit more available for people in the world because not only do you get the weight loss that goes with it, but my back doesn't hurt anymore, and a lot of the things that were caused by my weight, it's all gone now.
Yeah.
So doctor's visits I was making because of the other things, because of the heart issues, because of the high cholesterol, I'm not going to those doctor's visits anymore because I don't need to.
Peter, that's
Wow.
a hell of an endorsement. Thanks for your call. Michelle
We're
from
getting a
Danvers
lot
says
of them.
something interesting. I'm a pharmacist. I'm concerned using these medications circumvents addressing our systemic nutritional issues. I think it does, doesn't it? I mean, obviously, if it's a magic pill, a magic drug, a magic injection.
These people are saying that they've done this, that they've done this
They've
diet
tried
and
to do
that
the other
diet,
things,
and they've
yeah.
done the exercise, they've done
And it didn't work.
that, and it didn't work. Listen to this one. My husband lost over 60 pounds on Wegovy. He weighed 270 pounds. Over 275 pounds. Insurance covered it. Minor copay. We now, though, have to pay $800 a month to continue. The GI issues are real, but minor compared to the benefit. He feels so much better, is able to exercise more, and his cardiac health has improved. And the second person says, I'm on Ozempic, 5'3". I was almost 170 pounds. I've lost 30 pounds. So incredibly happy about how I look and feel. I haven't really had many side effects. The results are incredible. I feel happy about how I look and feel in clothing.
Yeah, but we have to provide a little balance here. Every call and every text has been a success story so far. As I said earlier, the NPR story we read, I think I got the number right. I know it's a majority. I think it's 65% of people who start on the drug. Is that the right number? Do you have it in front of you?
I think so.
I think it's
that's it.
65%
Let me double
drop
check.
off it. And obviously, they're not dropping off it because it's going great for them. For whatever reason, I think mostly side effects, as you say, it wasn't for them. So there is another side to the story, despite these success stories.
There is another side of the story. Let's go to Margot in New Hampshire. Hi, Margot.
Hello, Margot.
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Perfectly. Thank you.
So I'm not on any of the medications, but what happened, this is a little different experience. I went to the doctors several months ago. I have put on weight. You know, I'm turning 65. Arthritis in my knees a little bit, nothing terrible. But I tested right on the border of diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have diabetes in my family. And so she gave me that news, and the very first thing I was offered was medication. And I guess it just caught me off guard. Like, is that really the go-to now? We didn't discuss diet. We didn't discuss exercise. Do you want to be on medication? And I just think that, not that I haven't tried on my own to address these things, but I feel like the medical profession, maybe it isn't the first thing you go to. And it just caught me a little bit off guard. Like
I have to. My mic's not on. Here it is. I feel exactly. I don't have any expertise, so I should say that you actually have been in the middle of this. My attitude is I don't know if a doctor is listening who call in the next few minutes. Maybe we have one on the line. I'm wondering if doctors would suggest more traditional methods of trying to deal with the issues, and then if they don't work, doing this. So I'm sort of with you, Margot, and thank you for your thoughts. Appreciate it.
RFK Jr., I'm no fan of his, but he's right about the junk food. And we do have kind of a junk food epidemic in the United States of America.
So you have to try to improve your nutrition, try to lose weight,
on the other hand,
and see how it goes.
You hear people constantly talking about they've tried this diet, that diet, that diet. What are we, like 70% of people in America are overweight, and a whole bunch of them. And by the way, it is 65% of people who tried
dropped off.
Ozempic. Yeah, particularly if they're just doing it for weight loss. People that are doing it for a combination of things like diabetes and heart disease, they're more likely to stay on. And this person who got off it talked about really bad, feeling sick to your stomach and throwing up, like constantly, and felt too sick to exercise. They had heartburn, they had abdominal pain, they had a lot of problems. So apparently it's different for every person.
Just realized we have Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett, and while we intended to speak mostly about prostate cancer, which we obviously will in light of the Biden news, we'll talk about this too.
Barbara in Narragansett, thank you for calling.
Hello,
Barbara.
Hi, thank you. I've been on Ozempic for 2 years. The doctor surprised me. Like the last caller said, that came out. I hadn't planned on going it, but I'm a person who has heart disease. I've lost part of my big toe to diabetes. I have a neuropathy. I'm on a ton of medication, plus Ozempic. So my A1C, I'm sounding like an ad now, from 9-something down to 5 point something. So, but it gives your brain a rest. You don't have to think about food, when you're. It really does, and same with the liquor. I gave up drinking 2 years ago, and I'm the type that didn't drink a lot, but I could never leave a wine bottle half full. It's open, it's emptied. So, and it wasn't my plan to do that, but it does give your brain a rest. That's all I can say. It's there are side effects, but I don't know if it's from my cholesterol medication or from my heart disease medication.
Yeah. But the side effects are worth it for you, obviously, right?
Yeah. So for me, it's changed my life. It
Apparently
really has.
So.
I'm alive. There's so many things that can kill me, but it's not going to be Ozempic.
Barbara,
Barbara,
this is incredible.
thank you.
All these calls and texts.
And just equalize this with people that have had problems. This person says, my partner was on Wegovy for about a month and a half before it caused her a bout of pancreatitis that put her in the hospital for a week and took over a month and a half of strict diet to recover from. She wasn't being monitored for pancreatic systems. So I guess there are other bad sides to this.
I'm sure there are. Well, obviously, as evidenced by the 65%
but boy,
number.
listen to these people. I mean,
I know.
they don't have to think about food all day. Who wants to think about food all day except for you?
Exactly. By the way, I wish I didn't, but on the other hand, I'm serious. It gives me joy to be contemplating what I'm going to be stuffing myself with later.
That's just because I think if you're a regular person, you don't think about food all day.
What are you saying?
I don't think about food all day.
You're saying I'm not a regular person?
Well, I think you've had fluctuations in your weight. Let's put it that way.
I have had fluctuations. Thank you for putting it really sweetly. That was really a beautiful, beautiful way to describe it.
All right. Jamie accused me of not liking food the other day. That isn't true. I do like food, and I can never eat just one piece of pizza. But anyway, coming up after the 1 o'clock news, Princess Khalil Gibran Mohammed on the fight for academic freedom in America amid attacks from the federal government. Basically, can Harvard University and schools like it survive this onslaught? You're listening to BPR 89.7, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Support the news you trust by donating your car, truck, or other used vehicle to our vehicle donation program. You'll have more space in the driveway this spring, and you may earn a tax advantage. Learn more at gbh.org/vehicle donation.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, and former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. BostonSpeakers.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio. It's Princeton and Harvard's Khalil Gibran Mohammed on how Donald Trump's doing on his promises to extinguish DEI in the public and private sectors, plus what Mohammed makes of Harvard's finally taking an activist stance against federal funding threats.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then, at my insistence, and over Jim's totally fake protests, we're going low rent to talk about Bellichic and Jordan Hudson. What is it about our collective obsession with the third-place Miss Maine, interview-stifling beach yogi Hudson? Be honest. Have you too been reeled into this story like a fisherman's mermaid? Or are you clutching your NPR tote bag, aghast that we'd even consider this story? Call or text next on the third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump's engaging in phone-based diplomacy today in his quest to end the largest land war in Eastern Europe since World War II. This morning, Trump got on a call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin has so far resisted direct talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to halt Russia's full-scale operation against its neighbor. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says Trump is frustrated.
He has made it clear to both sides that he wants to see a peaceful resolution and a ceasefire as soon as possible. But as for specifics on a timeline, I won't get ahead of the president.
President Trump was also expected to speak with Zelensky. Pope Leo XIV has met with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. NPR's Ruth Sherlock reports a conversation comes ahead of U.S.-led diplomatic efforts to make progress on a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine.
Vance, a Catholic convert, was among the last political leaders to meet with Pope Francis before he passed away. Pope Francis and the Trump administration had starkly different views, particularly on the topic of migration. Pope Leo has already spoken out in support of migrants, and in a readout of the meeting with Vance, the Vatican described, quote, an exchange of views and calls for, quote, respect for humanitarian law and international law in areas of conflict and for a negotiated solution between the parties involved. The Vatican has offered to host peace talks to try to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. Ruth Sherlock, NPR News, Rome.
The National Weather Service confirmed an EF3 tornado cut across part of southern Kentucky Friday night, killing at least 19 people. In London, one of the hardest areas hit, neighbors are helping neighbors in the aftermath.
It took hours for Sherry Shepard to reach her home after the storms. She arrived to the sounds of people calling for help and first responders trying to reach them.
The pictures don't do it justice until you've seen it. They just kept removing people, our friends, our neighbors.
Street after street, homes were gone. Miraculously, Shepard's was barely touched. So she turned her garage into a staging area for supplies. It's filled with things like food, water, tarps, and cleaning supplies.
We feel blessed. We're almost kind of feel guilty. We're just trying to help as much as we can.
Volunteers from as far as California have been working out of Shepard's garage. For NPR News, I'm Karen Czar in London, Kentucky.
President Trump's domestic priorities now head to the full House for a vote, but its fate is still far from certain. The Republican leadership is attempting to secure full GOP backing for a measure the Democrats are already united against. Republican House leaders have pledged modifications to appease fiscal hawks who've been demanding deeper spending cuts, including to Medicaid, to pay for the bill's tax cuts. It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. President Trump's tough-talking border czar, Tom Homan, says ICE's work is not done in Massachusetts and that he will come back to the Bay State soon. Boston 25 reports that Homan said he's willing to meet with Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, but adds that his experience contradicts Healey's claims that Massachusetts is not a sanctuary state. Homan says he gets a weekly report of public safety threats from counties within the Commonwealth. Sad news to report that the writer and retired professor Leslie Epstein has died. Epstein authored several books, was the director of the creative writing program at Boston University for some 36 years. His articles and stories have appeared in everything from the Atlantic Monthly to Esquire to the Washington Post, New York Times, Boston Globe, to name just a few. You also may have heard of his sons, Theo Epstein, the great baseball guru, and Paul Epstein, who is a social worker at Brookline High and founder of the Brookline Youth Center. Paul posted about his dad's death on Facebook earlier today, writing, quote, "Yesterday, I had to say goodbye to my wonderful father, Leslie Epstein. He of the razor-sharp wit, the towering intellect, and the hopefully inherited strong moral compass, and the bottomless well of nurturing love," unquote. Paul did add that info on a Shiva and celebration of life will be announced soon. Leslie Epstein was 87 years old. It's 62 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, working to help protect small businesses and the owners that run them, offering customizable coverages to salons, accounting firms, tradespeople, and more. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back at the library in Copley Square tomorrow and Friday. The Attorney General will be with us tomorrow from 1 to 2, Andrea Campbell.
Wednesday.
Oh, yes, right.
You're
Sorry,
the one that corrected me
Wednesday.
before.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
That's right. Today's Monday. And we're going to have the mayor with us on May 28th from noon to 1. Sorry about that. Hello again, Jim.
I don't know where we are or what day it is either.
Oh, no, you're right.
Don't
You're
feel
right. It's
bad.
Wednesday.
Join now on Zoom. Well, it's not Wednesday. It's Monday, but I know what you mean.
When the AG is with us on
kidding.
Wednesday.
I was trying to be somewhat funny,
Okay.
which I wasn't.
You were not.
obviously.
No,
I
you
wasn't at
were
all.
very bad.
We're joined.
It's really
Okay.
pathetic attempt.
Let's move ahead. Can we please? Thank you. We're joined now on Zoom by Khalil Gibran Muhammad. He's professor of African American Studies and Public Affairs at Princeton and a visiting professor at Harvard's Kennedy School. He joins us monthly. Khalil, it's good to see you. Welcome.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey there.
Hello. So you wrote a great piece a few weeks ago. Now, of course, I'm feeling really bad for Harvard, but you wrote a great piece a few weeks ago commending Harvard for standing up to Donald Trump, but asking why it took so long. Elaborate. What'd you say?
Well, I essentially said that Harvard, as the most powerful university in this country, should have long defended the university and higher education more generally against attacks on what students can teach, who can be hired there, this upside down world where academic freedom is under assault, but it's actually under assault by the people in the Trump administration. And we could see, many of us at Harvard and elsewhere, that what began in the K through 12 lower ed space, where outright teaching of race or sexuality or gender or you name it just is now criminal in K through 12, was going to eventually make its way into higher education. And we saw in Florida, in Texas, and elsewhere, going back to 2022 and 2023, precisely what happened, where state legislative bodies, again, banned certain curricular requirements and also began to close women's studies centers all around the country, and finally at private universities like Columbia, Harvard, and many others. So Harvard should have taken an affirmative and a forward-leaning position much earlier than it did.
You know, there are reports that Harvard was trying to see if an accommodation, whatever that means, could be reached before they had no choice. Is there such a thing as a decent deal that anybody could strike with this administration? I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about the law firms, and I know much more about them. All four of them obviously cut deals that are reprehensible, and they're going to be forced to represent clients who, in any case, is there such a thing as a good deal that a university could cut with the Trump administration?
Well, the key word in that question, Jim, is good.
Of course.
I mean, you just defined by virtue of the example of big law firms like Paul Weiss that you can make a deal with the Trump administration, but on their terms. And in this case, what is clear to me is that Harvard is caught in a web of its own confusion and deceit about what it actually is trying to solve for in this case. While I certainly commended the university for filing the lawsuit and finally drawing a line in the sand, I also wrote in that piece, and since then has become even clearer, that Harvard largely agrees with a lot of the criticisms of the Trump administration, particularly on its so-called war on woke. And there's a lot more evidence now that even since Harvard filed that lawsuit in decisions that Garber has made that actually demonstrate that agreement.
Well, you know, one of the things, and you certainly know a lot better than I do, but it does seem that a lot of faculty at the hotshot schools are more liberal than they are conservative. I mean, is that legit? There's not a lot of conservative scholarship out there at places like Harvard or Princeton or Yale or these other places.
Okay, so if I were to give you the short answer, I'd say yes. But the longer answer is that universities are by definition liberal, meaning that they are places that are permissive of a range of opinions about how the world should work. That is not liberal as synonym for democratic. So universities are not partisan, but universities do accept the basic premise of what a liberal democracy should be, which means that there is tremendous acceptance of difference and tolerance and pluralism and all these things, which are not features of conservatism or closed-mindedness or fascism, for example. So the criticism that conservatives should be more, like there should be balance in conservatives, actually would cut against the fact-based world that universities try to operate in. Just a simple example. The conservative movement right now seems to be opposed to fighting climate change on the premise, for some conservatives, that carbon emissions are not the cause of global warming, but in fact, it is God's hand paving the way for the rapture, and that we should use the bounty of God's infinite resources until God decides to take us all home. So does that mean that we need science faculty who are well represented in this point of view? No, it's absurd because it's not fact-based.
Can I get back to this good versus bad deal thing for a second? And by the way, I am of the opinion that the bar is higher for Harvard than any other place. Because if Harvard decides to capitulate, it would seem to me there's almost no chance for smaller institutions that don't have the resources to fight. Having said that, one of the things I wanted to broach with you, which I will now, is it seems to me that no matter what happens, even if Harvard wins its lawsuits down the line, the best of Harvard, as it's been known for decades, is gone. The reality is that future funding, I think everybody agrees, the administration has the right not to give them. The question is, can they eliminate existing funding? That sort of thing. So assuming that one agrees with that premise, that down the line there are going to be great changes and tremendous I guess, contraction of what the university is able to do. Is it possible that to quote Barack Obama, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Is it possible that an imperfect deal might be better than no deal, considering what awaits Harvard, Khalil?
Okay, so that's a lot, Jim. I mean, listen, they were already making an imperfect deal. The New York Times, for example, did a pretty long piece unpacking Alan Garber's career, his rise to this position as the president of the university, and also described in very great detail precisely all the things that Harvard has been trying to do under Garber to essentially meet the university, to meet the administration on its own terms. And in that way, while Harvard didn't sign a letter like Columbia did, agreeing to absurd ways in which their government was overreaching in trying to control the university's disciplinary, admissions policies, security policies, it turns out, even according to the New York Times, that Harvard University, before I ever got a letter, was doing precisely that.
You mean the Middle East Department thing, or what do you mean specifically?
Well, the university had changed its speech policies. It had changed some of its security protocols. It had changed its protest policy. It certainly adopted a definition of anti-Semitism, according to the International Holocaust Remembrance Association, that even the people who wrote the definition never saw as a speech code. They just saw it as a rubric, a kind of early warning system to see how dots connect in the world, and maybe they ought to be concerned. Garber did all of this without ever receiving a letter. So here we are, and I think the real issue for me, Jim, in suggesting that Harvard is the last stand, I'm beginning to change my opinion about that. And I'll tell you why. When Harvard released its anti-Semitism task force reports alongside its Islamophobia task force report, now about 2 weeks ago, Garber went on national television to talk to Lester Holt, where Lester Holt said directly to him, is anti-Semitism as much a problem now as it was since October 7th? He said it is a severe problem, which is to say that Garber, even as recently as 2 weeks ago, just before that report came out, was essentially saying we're in a constant four-alarm fire over anti-Semitism. So unless there is a willingness to basically say, not only are there limits to what this anti-Semitism problem is on campus, and we are working internally to solve it, they are inviting the Trump administration to continue to tell them that they are out of compliance and should be subject to these outrageous demands.
Well, not to mention the fact that I think any thinking person knows that Trump has no interest in curbing anti-Semitism in light of his hanging out with white supremacists and others. So the whole thing is a creation.
The other thing that always drives me crazy is that the Harvard's own report said, okay, there's a problem with anti-Semitism, but there's also a problem with Islamophobia. And I think you could certainly argue that when you see what's continuing to happen in Gaza, and there's no really way for people to protest without getting in trouble. That seems to me to be Islamophobic. Now I'm reading about that Esther project that this Project 25 had. That this
2025.
Project 2025. That was the whole deal. That we're going to now say that any pro-Palestinian protest is also pro-terrorist protest, which is not
true. Not pro-Hamas, but pro-Palestinian.
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. But the other thing I think about, I mean, you're a black guy. I can't imagine it was all, hearts and flowers for every black kid that was, the only black kid in the class with 40 white kids. I mean, there's obviously been racism on campuses for decades and decades. And obviously, if you were black decades ago, you weren't even going to get close to Harvard. So, the hypocrisy just kind of really hits you over the head.
Yeah, aside from me being a black guy, this is true.
Well, I noticed that.
He said this is true.
It is
Thank
true.
you for confirming it. We appreciate
very observant.
it. We are. Both of us are.
But let me make a more pointed use of hypocrisy for the Harvard administration at this time. So they released these two reports, and while there's always this sort of talk of, we're solving for both problems, in the same paragraph where they mention that we've released these two reports and found evidence of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, everything else in the paragraph is about solving for anti-Semitism. Hard stop. And one of those things is very revealing in the most recent letter that Garber sent to Linda McMahon, the head of the Department of Education. He said, we are working to solve our problem by investing in more teaching about Judaism. Didn't say more teaching about Judaism and Islam and creating a pluralistic environment where understanding religious traditions and faith traditions is important to a quality education here. He said, we are solving for more Judaism. Now, if the problem is about everybody's faith traditions, that's not indicated in what Ilan Garber is saying. Additionally, if we go back to that December 5th hearing that led to Claudine Gay's forced resignation, one of the things that Republicans, not Trump, but Republican congressional people were calling for was greater teaching about anti-Semitism and Judaism on campus. We are seeing the full arc here play out. But as the black guy, to come back to your point, Marjorie, the same argument supporting more teaching of anti-Semitism and the greater focus for the Garber administration now is at the expense of teaching about racism, the expense of dismantling DEI, is at the expense of canceling black graduation and LGBTQ graduation and all the graduations that Garber has now canceled since the lawsuit was filed.
We're talking to Khalil Gibran Muhammad. By the way, a few of you have texted asking where can you find his piece that Marjorie referenced at the top. It was in U.S. News, April 24th. Harvard is leading the fight for academic freedom. Why did it take so long? I'm sorry, Marjorie.
That is a great point. I mean, it's like one area and not the other areas.
It's on purpose. It's not accidental. It's a quick reminder. The very argument that was mounted against the problem of anti-Semitism was DEI, was teaching about racism. It was foundational to the argument. Bill Ackman, the billionaire donor of Harvard University who led the attack alongside Larry Summers against Claudine Gay, flat out called DEI racist and anti-white and anti-Semitic. So this is where we are now with this university essentially accepting some version of that criticism in its policy apparatus.
Can we move away from universities since you mentioned DEI a couple of times? I wanted to broach, I am confused by the private sector and their retreat, where there is retreat on DEI. I was reading a piece about Verizon, and I was wondering why Verizon was retreating. And then I read further into the story, and we learned the same reason why Shari Redstone at Paramount is urging CBS to back off Trump. And obviously, we know the head of CBS News stepped down this morning is because they're trying to get the Trump administration to approve some sort of merger, buyout, whatever. Verizon's in the same situation. What I don't understand is if you're a major private entity, you're not reliant on federal funding. The threat that I read about is if you don't step back from your DEI commitments, Pam Bondi is going to look into whether or not you've committed crimes for which you can be prosecuted. I don't even know what those crimes are. Other than looking for an excuse, which they've probably always been looking for, to step back on DEI, why does any private company fear threats unless they get federal money from the federal government on that front?
Well, there are two primary things they're solving for. They're solving for actual lawsuits, meaning that the Department of Justice can open, theoretically, an investigation into alleged discrimination, which just ties up resources and your general counsel in responding to...
Meaning if you win, you're saying, okay.
Yeah, well, just the mere accusation by the government can then cause you to have to deal with a lawsuit. The second is reputational damage, which of course feeds directly into concerns amongst shareholders and directors that the value of a company will take a hit, just like we saw with Budweiser and its trans ad. So the two of those things together will lead some companies to say there's too much risk to our value, particularly if we're publicly traded. If they're privately, did you say privately? I might have missed
privately, that. Privately.
Yeah. Well, I think the same is theoretically true. While a market won't punish you on the stock market, your customers might defect if they think that as a company you are giving license to anti-white discrimination, which is the basic charge here by the Trump administration.
If I had asked you 120 days ago, if I had described to you the retreat from core values that so many institutions and individuals of prominence have engaged in the last, I think, 4 months of Trump, and say this is what it's going to be like by May, what is today, 19th or something, would you have believed it even be remotely possible that there could be, I was going to say this much progress, a poor choice of words, this much movement on so much that matters in such a short period of time?
No. I mean, I've been around teaching and learning and understanding the past for my entire professional career. So there's not a lot that surprises me with respect to our politics and the potential for backlash and retreat away from justice. But there's no question that the sheer audacity of Trump administration and Congress to cede any oversight over the illegal behavior of this administration, aside from the response of law firms or private corporations or universities, all of it in total is breathtaking in its reach and capacity. So no, I would not have anticipated that it would be as bad as it is now. This is unprecedented in that regard.
And what do you think Harvard's got? I mean, I know your connection is less, but some with Harvard than it was when we first met you. What does Harvard look like in 3.5 years
or,
if this track?
As well as the teaching hospitals, which a lot of us are really worried about, Mass General, Brigham, those are all Harvard teaching hospitals that are losing all this research money, and they're some of the best hospitals in the country.
Right, even if they fight like hell, what do they look like?
Well, I think that, first of all, Trump won't be in office in 3 years. So they will look
He won't?
like...
What, he won't?
He won't. I'm going to go on the record and say that he will not.
Why is that, please?
Well, because the Constitution has not yet been changed. So I don't think that this is going to be the outcome, that Trump will figure out a way to have a third term.
Oh, you mean 4 years? I'm sorry. I thought you meant even before his term was over.
3 years means that we're in the midst of a presidential race.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
3 years plus, Jim. 3 years plus.
3 years plus. Sorry. So I think that what we could reasonably expect at this time is that there would be a huge diminishment of Harvard's research footprint, particularly in the sciences and the medical sciences, more particularly. And there will be a huge reduction in staffing along those lines. And it will be tragic for the scientific research that is happening that can help solve for any number of problems, including cancer research, which was recently reported on by some, describing studies that are 40 years in the making that will continue to produce findings based on the length of time that the research has been ongoing, and all of that is under threat right now. So we lose a lot, and Harvard loses a lot, but Harvard's not going anywhere. Harvard did exist before people figured out germ theory. So, Harvard and other universities will have less research but they will continue.
But why? But we've said before, and we've spoken to people who are in the industry, as are you, to say that doesn't come back so easily. After 3 years of people finding out that European nations can be very generous and welcoming, China can be very generous and welcoming to researchers, it isn't like a switch goes off on January 20th of 2020, whatever it is, 2029. A sane person is elected president of either party, and all of a sudden the research starts flowing back. This is like a generational, if not worse, kind of thing, isn't it?
Sure, no question. I completely agree with that. But again, I think that if we have a democracy in 4 years from now, then there will have to be a period of rebuilding. People have to take stock of what's happened. And even that's not a guarantee that there won't be another backlash to a Democrat who might get into the White House at that point, or a Congress that changes from red to blue. We have some deeply entrenched problems to solve for that are not both sides' problems. There's one party and a hell of a lot of Americans who don't believe in democracy any longer. And so if we're going to survive as a democracy, that's not going to be simply worked out by electoral cycles. That's going to be worked out, guess what, Jim? Guess what, Marjorie? By education.
I was so disheartened to read this statistic about supposedly a third of Americans have no confidence in higher education. And I think of these schools, he's going after 6 of the 7 Ivy League schools.
Seven of the 8. There are 8 of them,
aren't there? 7?
There are 8.
There are 8? Okay.
She doesn't include Penn because that's where I went, so she doesn't think that should be in
He's
the...
insulting both of us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so 7 of the 8, however many there are, not Dartmouth, and who'd you say?
Well, Dartmouth was holding out, but she's not holding out totally anymore.
But you taught at Harvard, you're at Princeton now. A lot of people say K through 12 isn't working out so great, but these schools are great schools where, and kids come from overseas to go to these schools, and, I went to a good college. It was a life-changing thing. And that's what's so sad to me about these attacks on one of the best things we do in America. You know what I mean?
No, listen, the people who are in charge of our government and the people who are ceding their own power to oversee the executive branch of the government are deeply hostile to an educated citizenry. They do not want Americans not only to be a educated population that can hold them accountable and can draw upon an international community with shared commitments to a world that will protect planet Earth. I mean, I'm just going to give one tiny little example. President Trump ran against electric vehicles, period. Promising to destroy an infrastructure to help reduce carbon. I mean, it's insane. But he had a political mandate to do so from the people who voted for him. I don't want to say mandate. He had political success in running on that. So the only way to solve this problem is to figure out how to do a better job re-educating our population about our core values and what it means to work together. Otherwise, it might as well be Game of Thrones.
Well, by the way, but it's against his self-interest. I'm sure you both saw the polling this weekend that said even though his numbers are low, where does he continue to do really well? Low information voters who are not following what's going on. So the less you know, the happier you remain to be with Donald Trump. Khalil Gibran Muhammad, it's great to talk to you as always. Can't wait till next time.
Same here.
Okay.
Be well. Great
Thank
to see you.
Thank you very much. And great peace. And the whole thing is very depressing. Anyway, thank you. We've been speaking with Khalil Gibran Muhammad, professor of African American Studies and Public Affairs at Princeton and a visiting professor at Harvard's Kennedy School. He joins us monthly, and we very much appreciate his time. Okay, coming up after a quick break, we're going back to the tabloid land, Jim.
Don't be defensive, by the way.
I'm not going to be defensive.
I want you to be bold.
Something a lot of us just cannot stop thinking about. And lucky for you, Jim, it's not Trump related. Why are we so obsessed with Bill Belichick's girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, or the whole romance? Operators are standing by to take your call and text at 877-301-8970. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Not talking about this.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Malcolm X spent some of his formative years in Boston. Today, the city is marking 100 years since his birth. A new report examines how organizations serving the state's Latino communities are doing. And in the new book, Original Sin, reporters Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson lay out a jarring account of Joe Biden's decline. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Museum of Science, presenting Imprinting, Inside the Artist's Brain, a sonic self-portrait by B.D. Wolf, via listening stations connected to a retro future thinking cap. More at mos.org. And Bryant University, where tomorrow's leaders can discover that beautiful grit gets you in the know, the room, and in demand. Learn more at bryant.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. All angry texts for the next 25 minutes can go to 877-301-8970 because there are two types of people in the world. The people who unabashedly admit their Jordan Hudson, Bill Belichick obsession. Marjorie is clearly one of those people. Then there are people who have absolutely no interest in the story. There's at least one of them, maybe two out there. I will admit, I think I might be a third type of person. I've thought about this, Marjorie. For weeks, I've rolled my eyes as Marjorie asked just about every guest on the show a Jordan Hudson question. Well, I have to admit, in private, I may read one or two of these stories. Then I'm going to explain to you why. I've thought a lot about this morning.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to tell you a minute. 877-301-8970. And by the way, for those of you who are too highfalutin for this, go to the newspaper. They're the top-rated stories in the Times, the Globe, the whatever it is. This is what people are talking about in this country. What is fueling this national obsession? Is it related to the fact there are multiple degrees of separation between Hudson and Trump? A welcome reprieve, meaning it's a break, a reprieve, a welcome reprieve from the horrors of the federal administration. A local infatuation just brings you some sort of sick joy. What side are you on? And in terms of this, I don't mean one versus the other. Are you interested or pretend that you're not interested, or maybe you're really not interested? And it's fine to say that you have no interest in this and we shouldn't be talking about it at 877-301-8970. I would say my fascination with this, and I do consume every word of it, is not quite as low rent as yours, I don't think. Here's what I think it is, okay?
I'm definitely more low rent than you,
I think. By the way, I don't mean that as a criticism. Okay. I mean it as a description. I think
you do live in Cambridge.
I have had
after
contempt for Bill Bellichic for years and years and years, and the reason for that is how he treats people. I think I'm actually one, despite my reputation. I try my best, not always succeed, to treat other people pretty decently. He went out of his way when he was on top of the world to treat reporters and other people like total crap. And I love the fact that he now is in a position where he's taking crap. That's number one. The people he was cruelest to are the media people. And I love the fact that the discomfort that he is suffering to a great degree is caused by reporters and other media people who are doing their jobs. Some of them are not doing their jobs hard enough, I should say. This notion, like he was being interviewed by Michael Strahan on Friday, is that it's my personal business. Well, if it's your personal business, then you shouldn't be taking photographs doing yoga acrobatics with a fish on the beach in Nantucket. If you take those pictures and allow them to be posted, then the answer is you're fair game. So that's my reason. Your obsession is purely salacious. Is that correct? I mean, I'm trying to be as honest as I can.
Well, there are a lot of reasons, because I feel like I've known Bill Belichick for like 20 years now.
Well, you have.
As the coach of the Patriots. You
have.
And I'm also fascinated by this young woman. I mean, she's really pulled it off here. She's got $8 million worth of real estate under her belt.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
Paid off, by the way, all paid off.
Yeah, bought multifamily buildings in Dorchester and Roxbury and a 2-bedroom house in Harwich. That's $8 million worth of property. She's 24 years old. That's a wow. And she's started half a dozen limited liability companies. I'm amazed that she seems to have him so far under her thumb. I find that incredible, too. He calls her his creative muse and says he helps her out on the business side of things. But it just seems odd to me. her previous boyfriend, who's 65, he said she's wise beyond her years. But it's just interesting to me that I see him as a little bit snookered here, and I'm just wondering why. He had a girlfriend before that was closer in age to him.
Holiday,
that he was with for a long time, and he married his college sweetheart back from Wesleyan years.
Yeah.
But, it's not everybody that has a girlfriend 50 years younger that walks across the
49,
field down there at University of North Carolina in a long coat and a mini skirt and white boots with stiletto heels marching across the field. And it has him so wrapped around her finger that the people at UNC are getting a little nervous about what they're getting in this new coach. It's fascinating. I mean, I know a lot of 24-year-olds who could never pull this off. So I was surprised she didn't win Miss Maine the other night. She didn't win.
Well, she probably came in third because of him, don't you think?
She came in third. He was in the front row at the Miss Maine
with her father
pageant. Yeah, that's right. And her parents, they must be very happy for their daughter, I guess.
Very happy.
Because they had this company. The father was a fisherman. They up there in Maine. And
Listen to you.
I read the story. I read the story by Mark Shanahan.
Mark did a very
comprehensive story.
Yeah.
And they went out of business because there were rules about fishing that put them out of business. So, she's down in Provincetown. You're going to Provincetown this weekend.
I might be.
You said you could stop by her
Toys
shop.
of Eros.
That's right. Her mother runs Toys of Eros
I will.
sex shop.
I'll be there.
And people really like her down there. So it's just a crazy story.
Yeah,
and
nice
I did,
try,
after
Marjorie.
all, working for a tabloid.
Nice try. This has nothing to do with Marjorie. Marjorie's trying to give like an intellectual explanation.
What else?
The 49-year thing you're obsessed with. Can we say that?
I am. And the double standard drives me crazy.
What's the double? Oh, you mean if a woman were doing this?
Because if it was, if it was a 70, what is he? How old
73.
is he? 73-year-old woman with a 24-year-old man, people would be
I know a lot of 73-year-old women with 24-year-old men. I do. Want me to lay them? 877-301-8970. And by the way, we really hope people do call us and excoriate us for talking about this. But we decided, what was the story? Mark Shanahan's story was number 1 or number 2 on the Globe website today. And if you read the comments on the Time stories and others, the comments are huge. I mean, in terms of number. This is what people are concerned. And by the way, it is a great release. Is it not a great release from the pain of the day?
Yeah, and I think this is not going to end well for Bill Bellichic.
Why do you say that?
I just don't think it is.
You don't think so?
No, I don't.
Okay, 877-301-8970. You know her prior boyfriend was 65, you said?
Yep.
She was 11 at that particular time. Actually, I can't. That's probably
that's
slanderous.
Not
I was
true.
only kidding. It was a very poor joke.
She was young.
Didn't
she
mean
wasn't,
that. No,
she wasn't that
never
young. And
think
he said she was wise beyond her years.
Yeah, she was.
Never seen much more than any 20-something he'd ever met in his life. That's what he said.
Okay. By the way, anonymous text. This is even more boring than pledge breaks. Who cares? But Lucy in Worcester nails it. This story is like a monkey with a gun. You desperately want to look away, but you just can't. And Pam in Maine says it's because he is smiling as if he has always been this happy. Yeah, he's like a total misanthrope kind of character, and he's getting his comeuppance, which I am loving. What are you laughing about?
Some of the texts that I
can't read.
I can't read.
Well,
no.
I mean, obviously people are saying that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to George in Tiverton, Rhode Island. Welcome, George. How are you?
Yeah, Jim Browdy, all right.
Yeah.
I agree with you on this one. I usually don't.
It's okay.
He shows up on CBS with a ripped up sweatshirt, and then they ask him about it, and he's like, whatever. and then
it's a good imitation. Go ahead.
And then you can't. Well, I got them all. You can't blame her. You can't always totally blame him because she's in it too, and she sees something in the guy. He walks into the locker room with 50, 300-pound guys, and they're all quiet down because they all want to get in the game, and they listen to him. So he commands respect pretty much his whole life. Now, I love what you said about the reporters getting their comeuppance. You got to admit, okay, she goes for the Miss Maine pageant and loses. I mean, why does she need to do that? She's world famous now.
I wondered about that, too. Why bother with the Miss Maine pageant,
She wanted to help
right?
the fishermen in Maine. That was her campaign or something like that.
Yeah, I guess so, but it's too late for that. She's already, Miss Maine's going to do nothing. But she was gracious. She came in third. I got to tell you, did you see the green catsuit she had on, though? The girl's got a hell of a body. I mean, she was walking.
Yeah.
She walked by the kid. No, but But Jim, let me add one more thing. You go, I'm a nice guy and this and that. You're doing that. Yep. You're cutting people off. You'll cut me off in a second.
That's right.
And,
no, I was actually going to cut you off a minute ago,
no,
but
George,
I forgot.
I have a question, though.
No, I made you laugh.
You did.
Audrey, I'm really from Fall River, okay?
You are?
I'm behind you, and he wants you so badly. Yeah. My sister took lessons. We know you. My sister took lessons from your mother. If I told you my last name, you'd.
Her mother was
piano teacher. She was a piano teacher.
George, leave your family name with a producer.
Yeah, that's right. On Rock Street, absolutely.
When can
George,
I cut him off?
And you, like a lot of my family, they moved over the line from Fall River to Tiverton, Rhode Island. That's where you are now, right?
I'm from Westport now.
George,
Westport,
fabulous.
Even better. Hold on, I have a question for George.
Okay,
I have a question for George.
He's going to cut me off. Listen, you go down to P-Town. It's a great place, okay?
Okay.
It's more than fun.
George, had you ever heard, I didn't know about this style of dress, but now I know. Did you know that there's a style of dress called a bralette?
That's what Mark Shanahan called the outfit.
That's what she was wearing at that.
Believe me, George knows
and she
about
does have
bralettes.
she does have a beautiful figure. There's no question
George,
about it.
don't hang up. You're going to tell the producer the family name so Marjorie knows who was taking lessons. Thanks for an excellent call, George.
Okay, now there was Mark Shanahan went and got a professional analysis from Dr. Monica O'Neill. She's a clinical psychologist who specializes in relationships and believes the intensity of public opinion about the pair is related, of course, to the age difference, but also to Hudson's demeanor and the prominent role she seems to be playing in Bellichic's career.
What do you mean demeanor? What does that mean?
Well, I'm going to tell you. This is what Dr. O'Neill said.
What'd she say?
I don't know how much women care about this story. It seems like the bigger sense of disgust, disappointment, or what the heck is going on is coming from men because Hudson doesn't fit the mold of the trophy wife who'll just go along silently. She's so brazen, so outspoken, that men are questioning not just Bellichic's judgment, but his cognitive function.
I have to
Elder
say,
abuse.
Maybe. Well, I don't care about any of it. I care that he's. It's all payback time for a guy again who has treated other human beings trying to do their jobs horrible for his whole career while he prospered. Not to mention the fact, by the way, I am in the school, as you well know, Marjorie, and as Trenny knows, to think the reason he's quote the greatest coach of all time is because he had the greatest player of all time, without which he would have been a big,
some of us,
fat
of course,
nothing.
Have always thought that.
Okay,
it was Tom Brady. Tom Brady, whose picture used to be like 20 by 20 feet
right across from our
the
library
street.
studio.
Yeah, so we're down at the library. I'm broadcasting, and Tom Brady is staring at me the entire time. Yeah, it was very big
Sarah and
big
Wellesley,
moment
you've
for
been
me,
very
Jim.
patient.
You know what? They took the sign down now, though.
And it's very sad. Well, TB12 is shuttered or some such thing.
It's gone.
Sorry, Sarah. Welcome to the show. Hi.
What's wrong with an outspoken, capable, competent woman telling a guy what to do? Women can't tell men what to do.
Of course they can.
I think she's telling him what to do, Sarah.
That article used the word brazen. Just switch it up. What if it was a guy? A woman would never be a guy would never be labeled this way. And Marjorie, I love you, but there are definitely sexist tones to double standard.
There is a huge double standard.
Can Bill Bellichic have a healthy relationship with a woman within a few decades of his age? He's making a fool of himself. Can he carry on a conversation with somebody who's, can he maintain a relationship with somebody, an older person? Maybe not.
Well, so Sarah, I don't get what your I guess I'm not sure what your point is.
What is your point there, Sarah? Go ahead.
Your point is that this is, I mean, I think the sexism is that it couldn't be done in reverse. You couldn't have a 73-year-old woman with a 24-year-old guy.
Kelly in Rhode Island says Madonna's 66, her boyfriend is 28.
Yeah. Well, Madonna,
Okay, there you go.
Exception.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Rule. But is your point that you're upset with Bellichic, or you're not upset with Bellichic?
No, you've returned to the subject again, only to bring up the sexist double standard.
She mentioned it. Marjorie's
we keep talking about her figure and her clothing. It just continues.
Yeah, Marjorie mentioned bralette. I did not. I want to be clear. Sarah, thanks for the call.
I'm not clear the point, but thank you very much, Sarah, for the phone call.
877-301-8970. I would say, just so I can be even-handed, two fools as far as I'm concerned. No, I mean, really. I mean,
Well, there's that expression, there's no fool like an old fool.
No, I don't just mean him. I mean, I think also that behavior during the CBS interview was totally inappropriate. You didn't think so? Thank you.
Listen to this one.
Whatever.
Kelly says, Jordan's father should do what Katie Holmes' father did with that nut Tom Cruise.
What did he do?
Sending a Navy SEAL team to get her the hell out of there. Remember that? The ruined marriage with the New York...
What'd the father do?
Yeah, I guess he was concerned about Tom Cruise and the Scientology and concerned about the kid that they had together.
Oh, I don't know that.
With Katie Holmes, yeah.
Let's go to Ben in Worcester. Ben, hi.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Excellent.
I just want to first shout out my mom who's probably listening.
Hi, Mom.
Listening right now, and I just wanted to make a point. I love what Bellichic did for the Patriots. Not really a fan of his politics, but I do want to come in and defend him for a second.
Go ahead.
Okay.
And just say, so his job as a coach has been to just make decision after decision and make really hard decisions, right?
Yep.
And sometimes maybe in relationships or in love, right, people like to access a different part of themselves. So maybe having someone come in who you already said who appears to be a smart young woman, having somebody else make some of the decisions for him, right, might be something that he enjoys. Just a point I wanted to...
Well, can I counter that if I may?
But he said that.
I'm sorry.
Belichick has said that. I think that's a great point, that he wants to concentrate on football, so she worries about the Instagram and the TikTok stuff.
She has no idea what she's doing. When she interviewed, that interview was humiliating.
No, but Ben's point is she's doing all the social media stuff that he apparently is okay with.
Well, apparently is. Okay, Ben, what's your mother's name?
Marcia.
Hey, Marcia, you raised a fine son. Thank you. Marcia, you should call us, too. Ben, thanks for your call. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970. Sure, says an anonymous texter, is 78. Her boyfriend is 38. So there you go, Marjorie.
There are a couple of them, Madonna and Cher, probably unusual, but I mean, I think a lot.
How great is Cher, by the way?
Cher's great. Cher's great. Giselle has a younger boyfriend, but he's not that much younger. I think he's 12 years younger.
Anonymous says, this is painful. Why aren't we talking about wallpaper removal strategies? That would be better. We're actually doing that tomorrow at 1:30.
Give a crap about your opinion.
Well, thank you. Well, actually, we do care about her opinion, but or his or whoever sent that text. Let's go to where?
Ann from Cape Cod. What do you think, Ann?
Hi, Ann.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
To me, the whole thing is ridiculous. I don't care about it one bit.
Yeah.
But I did see a photo of Bellichic and the girlfriend at the Miss Maine competition or whatever, with him with the 4 Super Bowl rings on his hand. That, to me, is ridiculous. Does Brady walk around with the 4 rings on his hand?
He has from time to time, actually, but I know what you mean. Go ahead, Ann.
Well, I just thought it was ridiculous, and that's all I have to say. I could care less about his relationship with the woman. You know, it doesn't interest me at all.
Okay. Those are big. Those are big rings too,
they're
aren't
obscene. By the way, that's not Belichick's fault. That's what the team makes him.
He signed the Super Bowl 36, 38, 39, 49, 51, and 53. That's 6, right?
Yeah, he won 6 with the Patriots, and he was an assistant coach
he should have been wearing
for the
6
Giants.
Super Bowl rings.
Well, most hands only have 5 fingers.
Yeah, but you can put 4. Jim, you can put 4.
Maybe his other hand was in his pocket. How do you know?
I don't know, but he could have fit all 6 rings on. Maybe he's.
Is that your championship ring in your pocket, or are you glad to see me? That's where that expression comes from. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. By the way, have you ever seen one of those up close? I've seen one of those rings. Do you remember when Vladimir Putin took Robert Kraft's and didn't give it back? Do you remember this story?
That's right.
Yeah, Putin has one of his things. He just put it in his pocket or some such thing like that.
And Kraft never got it back?
Apparently not.
Anonymous texter wants to check and see if Bill Belichick is on Ozempic.
By the way, do you not think he's a case of, and I've always thought this, by the way, it has nothing to do with Hudson. He's a pretty clear case of arrested development, don't you think?
I don't know.
Well, you see him in his press conferences. How come you're not weighing in on that?
He was always nasty at his press
conferences.
Nasty
to everybody.
Yep. He was always nasty. Here's a texter. My only response is, ew.
Yeah, well, there's an ew factor. There is an ew factor there. Let's go to Drew in Lincoln. Drew, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie. How are you?
Excellent.
Long-time listener.
Thank you.
So, is the question, is there anything wrong with a stronger, very young woman in a relationship at a time when the stereotype is still for those kinds of women to be meek and not talk above their status? what's the question? Because I just tuned in.
No, the question is
50 years.
No, it is not. That is not the question. The question is, despite people of certain whatever pretending like they're not interested in the story, it is a huge national story, and we want to know if you are one of those people who's really into it, what motivates that interest, and if you're not, and it's honest that you're not into it, why you're not interested. But you can take any angle you want, Drew. And by the way, if you're saying, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
There are a ton. If your point was that we're suggesting they're not scads and huge numbers of 24-year-old women who are incredibly competent, and that's ridiculous. No one. I haven't heard anybody say that. But is that your point or what?
No.
What is your point?
I don't think there's anything wrong with dating a younger woman. I mean, I think it's unusual. It's a little weird for there to be that much of an age difference.
Yeah.
I mean, but she's old enough, obviously. How old is she?
24.
24.
Okay, so she's legal. And,
she is legal.
You know, I guess.
She's legal.
She is. It's
perfectly legal. Drew, thank you for your call. We appreciate it.
I wonder what the Bellichic children think about this.
Well, we've already discussed this. The wife of one of the two sons posted something about this is not how, not naming her, this is not how, right after the CBS thing where she said, we're not talking about that. Mm-hmm. This is not how professional PR people act, which, by the way, it is not how professional PR people act. And she took down her account soon thereafter. So I assume there was some blowback from that. You know?
So are you worried about Bill here, or are you not worried about Bill?
I don't care enough about him to be worried about it. I am I want to be clear because it is cruel, my position. I am luxuriating in the fact that he is taking a lot of heat and he is experiencing scrutiny that for the most part is not favorable because, as I say, I believe in payback. And as you know, I have a very long memory. We will not explain
who I'm
talking about in particular, but I have a very long memory. And when you treat people poorly, someday the favor will be returned. And I love that he's being trashed for whatever reason.
So you didn't think that the picture of him lying on his back on the beach with his hands and feet in the air, holding her up there in the dunes, was a triumphant picture for Bill
actually,
Bellichic?
That is the exception. I have that at home on my wall. I have it. I blew it up life size. That I do have. And the fisherman thing that they did for Halloween, when he's the Groton fisherman the fish stick guy?
Yeah, fish
and
guy.
And she's the fish stick or whatever she is.
No, she was the mermaid. He had a long line.
I find that very appealing.
Hooking her at the end of the line.
Yeah.
Ellen in the car. Thank you for calling.
Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Fourth time, and I was a summer job horseback riding teacher, Jim.
Oh.
Yes. So we had a good chat then. So, like you, I am not a fan of Mr. Bellichic because I think he was paid a lot of money and he should have been a better PR, more respectful of the press kind of professional, and I didn't find him at all that way. Mm-hmm. And I am just cleaning dirt out of my fingernails, as I told your screener, because I grow vegetables to give away to a pantry I work for. Why do people waste their time on this crap? Because, there's so much more you can be benefiting. I don't know. I think it's a waste of time. And then I do the diaper check. So when she was in diapers, how old was he? And then I get
49.
Freaked out.
49.
Yeah.
Ellen, that was a good one. Thank you very much. Good luck mulching or whatever you said you were doing there, growing or some such thing. Kind of.
I think one of the things that's true is that people are interested in this kind of stuff. I mean, People magazine is still pretty big.
It's a release from the pain.
Even though it's not what it used to be. And the all those National Enquirer things were huge.
Have you discussed this on the Culture Show? The Jordan Hudson Bellichic phenomenon?
We did a couple of weeks ago, yeah.
And did you take a lot of crap from people for being as low rent as you allegedly were, or no? We don't
I don't think so.
What was your angle?
Well, I'm trying to remember why we were talking about it now. I can't remember.
Because
Isn't that terrible?
The biggest stories
well, so I'll tell you why I'm interested, because I think it's a fascinating human behavior story. It's the same reason I'm really fascinated by the Karen Reed story, because once I started to backed up to Karen Reed, when I understood what was happening in that house that night, they were drinking how much, they were partying how much, this all unfolded, then the human behavior becomes really fascinating. And then when I think of Bill Bellichic in this case, I think, Well, it's kind of what you were saying, Jim. He had all of this control and power and was the winningest coach among the winningest coaches. And then to see this kind of evaporate and see the way that she's taken hold, I don't care about the age difference or the relationship. It's just what has happened to his career as a leader is fascinating to me.
Yeah. I'm interested in acquiring the $8 million worth of real estate.
Really?
I find that.
Marjorie wants to know how she can do that. I would actually like to know how I could do it.
Well,
I think who wouldn't want to?
Who wouldn't want to? Yeah, but I think the opportunities are gone for me. It's a long time since I've been.
Weren't you going to invest in the triple-decker in
I
Chelsea?
I invested in triple-decker in Chelsea. I should have done it, but I never did. Too late now.
You didn't do it.
Too
You
late
know what
now.
the problem is? Jordan bought it. Do you know that? So it's off the market. I don't know if you're aware.
I saw Tina Fey and Amy Poehler at the weigh-in yesterday, and they had jokes about Bill Belichick and Karen Reed, both of them.
Well, people going to yell at them, by the way? This is what people are talking about,
course
like
people
it
are
or
talking
not.
about it.
Okay,
No, you're not
fine.
supposed
How were
to-
they, by the way? Fabulous?
That was an exceptional show.
I'm sorry.
And they had Rachel Dratch there, too.
Oh, my
They had
God.
Debbie Downer, who was there.
Oh, Debbie Downer.
Yeah, she joined them for their
She's
weekend
great.
update sketch. It was a fabulous
She was great
show.
on the 50th anniversary show, too. We talked about that the other day. Okay, what's on the show?
So we have NASA
Culture
astronaut Katie Coleman and her husband,
Oh.
glass artist Josh Simpson. And we'll talk about how they have inspired each other with their mutual love of art and science. She spent about 6 months aboard the International Space Station, by the way. So,
Wow.
yeah, and he's been creating glass art for 50 years. We'll talk to Pedro Alonso about the Boston Public Art Triennial, which is getting underway this week. And we'll speak with artist Laura Lima about her piece, which is actually not necessarily for people, but for wildlife. And we will talk to Chris Robinson, who is an American Sign Language interpreter who does all the Commonwealth Shakespeare productions. So we'll ask him about what it is to translate Shakespeare, literally
Now, are you
translate
going to ask
Shakespeare.
each of the guests a different question about Belichick and Hudson or the same question? Have you decided yet?
No, because since our email system is already overloaded with emails to
You don't
you
want it to
guys, I'll just
crash?
let it handle it.
Okay,
yeah.
fine. Okay.
All right.
We don't want to further
Okay,
crash.
Jared, we'll be seeing you.
Thank you
and
very
we'll be
much,
listening at
Jared.
2 o'clock,
Okay,
too, by the way.
bye.
Thank you, bye.
You can keep up with us. Thank you very much, Jared, and thank you very much
See,
for
Jared
listening
took
to another
the
edition.
intellectual
You took
approach to the
intellectual
Belichick
approach.
Hudson
That's
thing.
right. Well, you should have come up with that, Jim.
No, mine's is all about revenge and retribution. Oh, it is. It's a retributional kind of
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, you can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. You can also check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're going to be back at the Boston Public Library with NBC Sports Boston's Tony Casey, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett, Globe film critic Odie Henderson, Boston Pop's conductor Keith Lockhart on his July 4th announcement, and CNN's John King.
Can't wait.
I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John McLeod Parker, our executive producer, Jane Bologna. Special thanks to the Stream Dream team, Patrick Lally, Sai Patel, Eddie Hickey, John Polanski, and Glenn Powell. Stay tuned to The Culture Show with Jared Bowen, starting immediately after us. I'm sorry my voice is so hoarse.
Your voice is actually pretty good
tomorrow.
today.
I'll be better tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great afternoon. Hope you can tune in tomorrow.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. Discover treasures from all 5 stops of Roadshow's newest tour, including a tin toy motorcycle, a Babe Ruth exhibition card, and more. Guess the top find on Antiques Roadshow tonight at 8 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at